Hello friends, welcome to Shadow Whisperer. All you see is darkness, just the sound of rain. Designed to help you relax, focus on the story, and drift into sleep. But before you do, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And yes, feel free to share where you're listening from in the comments. Now, let's begin. We were somewhere in Nebraska and the sun was getting low. It was like the world was holding its breath. The radio stations had long since given up. It was just static now, a lonely hum in the speakers. The sound felt like a blanket of silence. The road stretched out forever in front of us. It was flat and straight, like a ruler laid across the land. It just disappeared into fields of corn. Those cornfields looked exactly the same for miles and miles. Every tall green stalk blended into the next. It was endless. The sky above was a huge, empty blue, slowly turning softer. It really felt like we were driving through a painting. But it was a painting with only two colors, just the dull gray of the road and the endless green of the crops. This was part of our big move. Kathy and I were headed all the way from Washington State to Illinois. I'd just gotten a new teaching job there. It was a really big change for us. A fresh start, we told ourselves, for everything. We even said that one day we'd look back on this super long drive. We'd think it was romantic. A real adventure, we'd tell our friends. But right then, mostly, it just felt like a whole lot of sitting. My back ached a little. My eyes felt tired from staring at the straight line of asphalt. We had been on the road for what felt like forever, each mile blurring into the next. Kathy, my wife, had her bare feet propped up. They were resting right there on the dashboard. They looked so easy and comfortable. Her toes wiggled a little as if keeping time with a silent song. She was flipping through an old stack of Polaroids. They were just snapshots from years ago. They showed us younger, maybe a little less tired than we were now. Fuller of hope, maybe. She hummed a quiet tune. It was something I didn't know. A soft, airy sound that filled the car. The whole car was filled with that soft, humming sound. It mixed with the steady hum of the engine. It was a good sound, a normal sound. It made everything feel like it was just as it should be, like we were safe inside our little metal bubble. The air conditioner hummed softly too. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight. My knuckles were a little white. I kept my eyes on the endless stretch of asphalt ahead. It truly felt like we were the only two people in the whole wide world, just us and the car, moving through the quiet, flat land. A tiny speck in a huge, quiet place. The world outside felt so big and empty. We were just passing through it. The sun started to dip even lower. It painted the sky in shades of bright orange and deep purple. It looked like someone spilled paint across the clouds. The light got long and stretched out. It made the shadows of the cornstalks reach. They looked like long, creepy fingers reaching across the fields. Each one stretched further, getting thinner and thinner. That's when we saw her, just after sundown. The last sliver of orange light was fading fast. She was standing right there by the side of the road, all alone, so very small. It wasn't a town, it wasn't even a house nearby. Nothing, just the road, the cornfields, and this small girl. My foot twitched on the gas pedal. I was ready to just keep going. It didn't make any sense, her being there, not one bit of sense. But something made me slow down, just a little. It was a feeling in my gut, a strange, cold twist. She wore a pale blue dress. It looked old. Maybe it was a little faded from the sun. It hung loose on her small frame, like it was too big for her. Her arms were wrapped around something tightly. She held it close to her chest. It was a teddy bear, a really old one, the kind that looks worn and loved. Its fur was flattened and dull, but it also looked a little creepy too, like the kind you see in old dusty toy shops, sitting in a dark corner, or sometimes, in a scary movie. Its button eyes stared forward, unblinking. Her hair was a mess. It was long and dark, all tangled and matted. It looked like a bird's nest. It hung around her face, almost covering it up. You could barely see her features. It looked like she hadn't brushed it in a very long time. Maybe never. She didn't wave at us. She didn't cry out for help. She didn't even move. She just stood there, perfectly still, like a statue made of pale skin and dusty clothes, and she was in the middle of nowhere. Really, nowhere. No cars had passed us for what felt like forever. No houses, no gas stations, nothing but corn. Just quiet, rustling corn all around. Kathy saw her too. She let out a small, sharp gasp. It pulled me right out of my daze. Her gasp was loud in the quiet car. Her voice was suddenly loud. She sounded shocked, scared, but also like she had to stop. It was not a question. I slammed on the brakes without thinking. It was pure instinct. The tires crunched loudly on the gravel shoulder. We pulled over with a jolt. The car shook a little, then it settled. The engine idled, a low rumble, like a growl. The girl didn't move an inch. She just stood there, watching us. Her eyes were hard to make out under all that hair, but I could feel them looking at us. A strange, heavy feeling, like a weight pushing down on me. I slowly rolled down my window, very slowly. The evening air felt cool against my face. It carried the smell of dust and dry corn. It was a deep, earthy smell, but something else too. Something metallic, like old pennies. I couldn't place it. "Hey there," I called out. My voice sounded a little shaky. It was hard to keep it steady. "Are you okay?" My words felt small in the big, empty space. She just looked at us. Her face didn't show anything. No fear, no relief, just a blank stare. It was like looking at a doll, no feelings behind those eyes. Her mouth opened, very slowly, like it was hard to move. Her voice came out. It was barely a whisper, a dry, thin sound, like dead leaves scraping on concrete, or dry bones rubbing together. "They left me here." It hung in the air, that small broken sentence, just 3 words, but they hit us hard, like a cold gust of wind on a warm day. My stomach twisted. Kathy turned to me, her eyes wide, filled with worry and sadness. She looked like she was about to cry right there. Her lips trembled. After a minute of silent staring, she moved. She just walked to the back door. She didn't even look at us. She opened it. Then she climbed right in. She didn't make a sound. No fuss. No awkwardness at all. She just... in. It was the strangest thing. Like she was just getting into her own car. Like she was meant to be there. She couldn't have been older than 7, maybe 8. Her body was so small, so tiny. Her skin was pale, almost white, like a sheet of paper that had never seen the sun. Her hands, when she put them in her lap, looked delicate and bony. They were so thin, you could almost see through them. She had no shoes on. Her bare feet were dusty and scratched. They looked cold and dirty, like she had walked a very long way. She clutched that frayed teddy bear tight against her chest. She held it like it was the only thing keeping her alive, like it was her whole world, her only friend. Kathy turned around in her seat. She looked at the girl with such soft eyes. Her face was full of pity, full of a mother's ache. She spoke very gently, like she was talking to a small, scared bird that had fallen from its nest. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl didn't look at Kathy. She just stared straight ahead, out the front windshield. Her eyes were fixed on the vanishing road ahead of us. They didn't blink. Then, very slowly, she said it. "Annabelle." It was the way she said her name that made my skin crawl. It wasn't shy, like a child meeting new people. It wasn't scared, like a child who had been left alone. It was just empty, flat, like a robot reading words from a page. Just sounds, no feeling behind them, no warmth. I gripped the steering wheel harder. My knuckles were white. I tried to sound calm. "Annabelle, where are your parents?" My voice sounded forced, too loud. She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched out. She just shifted a little in the seat, hugging the teddy bear even tighter. Then she gave a tiny shrug. It looked like a very old, very tired shrug, like she had shrugged that same shrug many times before. "They don't want me anymore." Kathy's eyes instantly welled up with tears. I saw them shimmer in the rearview mirror. Her hand reached back without thinking. She gently touched the girl's arm. Her fingers just brushed the pale skin. Her voice was thick with sadness, full of pain for the child. It broke my heart to hear her. We told her we were going to take her to the nearest police station. We said they would help her, find her family, make sure she was safe, get her somewhere warm and fed. She didn't argue, didn't say another word. She just nodded once, very slowly, like she understood, but didn't care. It was like she expected nothing. That's when she started telling her story. Her voice was still that thin whisper, but she kept talking. It was a strange, flat stream of words. She said she had a family once, a mom and a dad, and an older brother. They lived in a farmhouse. It sounded like something from a storybook, a happy, peaceful picture. Her mom made apple pies, she said, the kind that filled the whole house with a warm, sweet smell, like cinnamon and baked apples. Her dad fixed fences around their land. He was always busy, always working. Her older brother had a dog, a big, friendly dog named Murphy. They played in the fields, ran through the tall grass. It sounded so normal, too normal somehow, for a girl who had just appeared out of nowhere, a child lost in the middle of nowhere. A chill ran through the car. It wasn't the air conditioning. But then, she said, something happened. She didn't say what it was, not at first. Her voice just got even quieter, barely a sound, like she was afraid to speak it aloud. She said that one night her father woke her up. He told her to get in the truck, not to make a sound. Be quiet. Don't wake anyone else. They drove for hours and hours. She said no one spoke, not a single word, just the sound of the truck engine, and the dark, empty road stretching out before them. Her father's face was hard, she remembered, like stone, grim. Her mother was crying quietly beside him, small, soft sobs that were barely heard. Then they stopped. They were near a cornfield, she said, the same kind of cornfield we were driving through. It was deep night. The stars were out, but the darkness felt thick. Her father told her to get out. He told her to wait, just to wait there, by the edge of the field. He said someone would come for her, someone would find her, but no one did, and she waited there, for a long, long time. The night grew colder. The stars seemed to get brighter, but offered no comfort. Kathy was really crying now. Big, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Her face was a mess. She shook her head slowly. Monsters. Absolute monsters. Her voice was a broken whisper. Annabelle tilted her head then. She looked at Kathy. Her blank eyes were unblinking. Her voice was still flat, but there was something in it now, something cold, something like a tiny piece of ice. They weren't monsters. They were scared. My heart gave a little thump in my chest, a strange, dull beat. I felt that chill again, the one that crawled up my spine. It felt like ice water slowly dripping down my back. It settled right at the base of my skull. It made my scalp tingle, like tiny spiders walking on my head. I gripped the wheel tighter. Scared of what? I asked. My voice sounded a little too loud in the quiet car. I tried to make it sound friendly, normal, but it came out strained. Annabelle looked me in the eye then, through the rearview mirror. Her eyes, even in the dim light, seemed too old for her face. They were dark and steady, like she knew things that a little girl shouldn't know. And she said it. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Me. The air in the car suddenly felt heavy, thick, like it was hard to breathe. My throat felt tight. I tried to force a smile, a fake, brave smile that didn't reach my eyes. Well, whatever happened, Annabelle, we'll get you help. The police will. No, she said. It was just one word, but it cut me off. It stopped me cold, like a knife slicing through the air. Kathy turned to her again, her face still wet with tears. She sounded gentle. She was trying so hard to understand, to break through the strange shell around the girl. Annabelle hugged the teddy bear closer. It seemed to shiver a little in her grasp. Or maybe it was just my imagination, a trick of the flickering dashboard lights. They won't help. Her words hung there like a dark cloud, a shadow over everything. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? Everything felt wrong. This whole situation was wrong. We just kept driving. The silence felt even heavier now. Town signs started to appear now and then. Faded green signs, with names I'd never heard of, like whispers from the past. But we never seemed to reach the towns. We just kept passing the signs, like they were just there to mark the emptiness, to show how alone we were. And the oddest thing was, as the minutes turned into what felt like hours, there were no other cars, none at all, no bright headlights coming toward us, no red taillights fading into the distance ahead, just us, just our car, and the endless road. The only sound was the steady, heartbeat-like thrum of our tires on the asphalt. It sounded too loud in the silence, too lonely, like the only heartbeat left in the world. It was almost like we were the only car left on Earth, or like the road itself was empty, like we had driven off the map. I gripped the wheel. My knuckles were white. I kept checking the mirrors, but there was never anything there, just the dark behind us, a growing blackness. The air in the car got colder, or maybe it was just my fear making me shiver. I saw Kathy rub her arms. She kept glancing back at Annabelle in the mirror. Annabelle was still staring straight ahead, her small face unmoving, like she was made of stone. The silence stretched. It became thick and heavy, like a fog. Finally, we reached a town. It seemed to just appear out of the darkness, a small cluster of lights, like a tiny island in a sea of black. It was called Millersfield, a tiny place. It looked forgotten by time. There was one gas station. Its sign flickered, making a buzzing sound like a trapped bee, casting strange, jumping shadows. One diner with a greasy light over the door. The smell of old French fries seemed to drift on the air, and a police station, just a small brick building, with a single, lonely light flickering over the entrance. It looked old, tired, like it had seen too many long nights and too many sad stories. We pulled into the small parking lot. The gravel crunched under the tires again, a loud, sharp sound. The engine stopped. Silence fell. It was a heavy silence, a thick blanket of quiet. Kathy reached for the back door. Her hand was shaking a little as she pushed the handle. She opened it. The back seat was empty. It was a shock, a jolt, like a sudden, cold splash of water. One moment she was there, a small, pale girl. The next, nothing. Just the worn fabric of the car seat. The door never opened, not fully. We never heard a sound, no click of the latch, no scrape of a shoe on the ground, no weight shifting on the seat. Nothing. She was just gone, like smoke, like she was never there. Except her teddy bear. It was still there, sitting on the seat, right where she had been. Its old, frayed fur looked even sadder now. Its button eyes seemed to stare up at us, empty, lost, like they were watching us. I stared at the empty seat, then at the teddy bear. My mind raced. How? How could she have vanished like that? It didn't make any sense. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing it with a cold hand. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thin. "She's gone," Kathy whispered. Her voice was thin, full of disbelief. She looked from the empty seat to me, her eyes wide and scared. Her face was as pale as Annabelle's. I stumbled out of the car. My legs felt weak and wobbly, like I'd been running for miles. I ran inside the small police station. The door chimed faintly as I pushed it open. The sound felt tiny in the heavy silence. The smell of old coffee and dusty paper filled the air. A lone officer was sitting behind the counter. He looked up, startled, as I burst in. He looked like he'd been half asleep. He had a round, tired face, and big, kind eyes that now looked confused. Then, slowly, they filled with a dawning worry. I yelled. My voice was loud and rough. "There was a girl. We picked her up on Highway 49. She just vanished from our car." I told him everything. About the girl. how pale she was, about the old teddy bear, about her story, about being left by the cornfield, about the strange, empty look in her eyes. I talked fast, too fast, trying to get it all out, trying to make sense of it, trying to make him believe me. My hands shook as I spoke. As I spoke, the officer's face slowly went pale. His kind eyes widened. They lost their softness. He sat up straighter in his chair. He looked at me with a strange, dawning horror, like he was putting pieces together in his mind, pieces he didn't want to connect. "What was her name again?" he asked. His voice was suddenly dry, like sandpaper. He leaned forward a little, his eyes fixed on mine. They seemed to look right through me. "Annabelle," I said. The name felt heavy on my tongue, like a stone. He stood up slowly. His movements were stiff, like an old man's. He walked to a drawer behind the counter. He pulled out a file. It was old, yellowed at the edges. Dust seemed to cling to it. He opened it. His finger traced something inside. Then he turned the file around, showing it to me. The photo inside hit me like a punch to the chest. It wasn't a drawing. It wasn't a mistake. It was her. The same pale face, the same pale blue dress, the same long matted hair that almost swallowed her face, and the same lifeless, empty stare in her eyes. It was Annabelle, right there in a faded picture. My blood ran cold. "She died," he said. His voice was barely a whisper now. It sounded like he was talking about a ghost, about something that shouldn't be real. 30 years ago. My breath caught in my throat. 30 years? My mind spun. It couldn't be. We had just seen her, just spoken to her. It was impossible. A sick joke. He kept talking, his voice low and grim, like he was telling a story he'd told too many times. Her father drove her out to Highway 49, the same spot you're talking about, shot her. My stomach churned. A wave of sickness washed over me. Kathy let out a small, choked sound, a gasp of horror that filled the quiet station. "Claimed she was wrong," the officer continued. He looked away, his eyes troubled, full of a deep sadness. "Not normal. Said she spoke in voices, killed animals in the barn. Said she was a demon. He just couldn't take it anymore." He closed his eyes for a moment. A long, weary blink. "Whole damn family's dead now," he added, almost as an afterthought. "Suicide pact. Happened in '93. They just gave up. Couldn't live with what they'd done or what they thought she was." Kathy whispered, her voice barely audible. Her face was white. "But we picked her up. She sat in our back seat. We talked to her. She told us about her family." The officer's eyes flicked to the window. His gaze went past us, out to our car sitting in the parking lot. He looked at it for a long, quiet moment, like he was seeing something we couldn't, or maybe he was just remembering. "You drove through her land," he said, his voice flat, lifeless. "That road cuts straight across it. It's where she's always been." I looked outside. My heart pounded in my ears, a drum against my ribs. My eyes went to our car. The teddy bear was gone. It wasn't on the seat. It wasn't anywhere. The back seat was completely, utterly empty. Just like she had vanished, so had the bear. There was nothing left, no trace. A cold dread spread through me. It crawled over my skin. We left the station in a daze. Our feet felt heavy, like lead. We didn't say a word, not a single sound. Kathy clutched my hand so tight her knuckles turned white. Her grip was like a vice, like she was holding on to me for dear life. My own hand felt cold and clammy. The night air outside felt colder than before. The flickering light of the police station seemed to mock us. It buzzed loudly. Every shadow looked like it could hide something terrible, something waiting for us. We got back into the car, slowly, carefully, like we were afraid of what might be in there with us. I started the engine. It coughed to life, sounding rough. We drove to a cheap motel, the kind with thin walls and flickering fluorescent lights, the kind that felt like a trap. We didn't care about the price. We just needed a place to hide. A place to feel safe, even though we knew we weren't. Not really, not anymore. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Annabelle, standing by the road, her face blank. And then, in my mind, her mouth would move in reverse, words going back inside her, sounds swallowed by silence. I saw the officer's face, pale and grim. I saw the photo in the file. Her eyes, so dead. I kept seeing the empty backseat of our car, where the teddy bear had been, and then suddenly wasn't. Just emptiness. It was a loop in my head. Kathy lay beside me, awake too. I could tell by the way her breathing was shallow and quick. She sniffled softly sometimes. I knew she was crying, but she tried to be quiet about it. Small, silent sobs. We didn't talk. There were no words, only the sounds of the night, the distant rumble of a truck, the faint buzz of the motel sign. The next morning, the sun felt too bright. It seemed wrong for the world to look so normal, so cheerful. After what we had just lived through, it felt like a joke. We got up, packed our bags in silence. Each movement was slow and heavy, and checked out of the motel. The clerk barely looked at us, just another tired face. We had to do it. We had to go back. I don't know why. Maybe to prove it wasn't real, to see if anything was there, to find an answer, any answer at all. Maybe just to finally break free from it. So we returned to the same stretch of Highway 49. The cornfields looked just as they had the day before. Endless. Quiet. Nothing special about them at all. Just green and quiet. The air hung heavy and still. It felt like the land itself was holding a secret. She wasn't there. Of course not. We didn't expect her to be. We drove slowly, our eyes scanning the edge of the road, the dusty ground, looking for anything, any sign, any clue. The sun was higher now, beating down on the asphalt, making shimmering heat waves, and then we saw it. A small wooden cross. It stood at the edge of the cornfield, almost hidden by the tall stalks. It looked very simple. Just two pieces of wood nailed together, like a child had made it. And it was fresh. The wood was light-colored, new, not old and weathered, like you would expect something to be after 30 years. The dirt around it had been disturbed. It looked like someone had been there very recently. Or, my mind whispered, like someone had knelt there. Or, even worse, clawed their way out of the ground. The thought sent a fresh wave of cold fear through me. It was a disturbing image, a truly chilling picture. We didn't stop this time. We just drove past it. Slowly, our eyes fixed on that cross. It was a marker, a sign, a chilling confirmation that what we had seen, what we had experienced, was real, more real than we ever wanted it to be. The horror followed us. It didn't stay in Nebraska. It hitched a ride. It came with us to Illinois. It settled into our new house, like an uninvited guest. A year later. We don't talk about that drive. Not really. Not out loud. It's like a silent agreement between Kathy and me. A wound that we don't poke. A memory too raw to touch. It's always there, though. In the quiet moments. In the way we sometimes jump at shadows. In the way we always lock the doors twice and check the windows. Our new house was nice. A quiet street. Good neighbors. But it never felt truly safe. Not after that. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every whisper of wind sounded like a voice. I found myself staring out the window a lot. At nothing. Just watching the street. Like I expected to see something. Someone. Standing there. Sometimes when I'm cleaning out the car. Or reaching for something in the trunk. I'll find things. Small things. A tiny dark piece of fur. Just a little bit. It's always the same. Frayed. Software teddy bear fur. I don't know how it gets there. I clean the car. I vacuum. But it always appears. Just a tiny dark reminder. And Kathy dreams. She screams sometimes in her sleep. A high, sharp sound that tears through the night. I wake her up gently. I hold her tight. She'll sit up, her eyes wide and glassy, still caught in the nightmare, and tell me. She dreams of children's laughter, faint, echoing laughter. It comes from deep inside cornfields, lost in the wind. It sounds happy, she says, but it's not. It's cold, empty, like Annabelle's voice. And sometimes, she says, the laughter comes from inside the house, just beyond the door. It makes my blood run cold. She wakes up shaking. I try to tell her it's just a dream, but I know it's not. Not really. We started leaving lights on at night, just small ones. A lamp in the living room, the hallway light, trying to push back the darkness, trying to feel a little safer. But the darkness wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside us. It was a quiet kind of fear, a fear that settles deep in your bones and never truly leaves. I became jumpy. My students noticed. I'd snap at small noises, stare off into space. I tried to shake it off, to be normal, but it was like wearing a mask that kept slipping. Kathy started getting thin. She didn't eat much, just picked at her food. Her eyes had dark circles under them. She jumped whenever the phone rang, or when the doorbell chimed. She swore she could sometimes smell dust and dry corn in the house, even when the windows were closed, even in the middle of winter, a faint, unsettling smell. I told her it was just her imagination, but a part of me wondered. A part of me thought maybe it wasn't, maybe it was real, maybe it was a trace. We stopped going out after dark. We didn't invite friends over. Our life became small, just the two of us, huddled together in our house, waiting. For what? We didn't know, but we felt it. That quiet presence, that cold feeling that would sometimes drift through a room, like someone had just walked by, someone unseen. One night, I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, or pretending to read. Kathy was already asleep, or trying to be. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard it, a soft, rustling sound, like dry leaves, coming from the kitchen. I froze. My heart started to beat hard against my ribs. I slowly stood up. Every muscle felt tight. I walked to the kitchen doorway. The light was on. Everything looked normal. The clean counters, the sink. But on the floor, near the back door, there it was. A tiny pile of dirt. Just a few flakes of dry earth, like someone had tracked it in. But no one had been in the kitchen, not since I cleaned it that afternoon. I picked it up. My fingers trembled a little. It was just dirt, but it was her dirt. I knew it. The kind you find in a cornfield. I swept it up and threw it away, but I couldn't get the image out of my head. The small, bare feet, covered in dust and scratches. A few weeks later, Kathy came running into the living room. Her face was white, her eyes wide with terror. She was holding a photo album. "Michael!" she gasped. Her voice was thin. "Look." She shoved the album into my hands. It was our old family album, from before, full of happy pictures. She pointed to a page, a picture of me and Kathy, young, laughing, standing in front of our old house in Washington State, and in the very corner of the picture, almost hidden by a bush, a small, blurry figure. It was Annabelle, her pale blue dress, her matted dark hair, staring right into the camera. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the album. It wasn't possible. That picture was taken years ago, long before we ever drove through Nebraska, before we ever saw Highway 49, before we ever knew her name. But it was her. I knew it. My stomach dropped. She had been there all along, watching, waiting. We lived with this feeling, this dread, every day, every night. It was like living in a cage made of fear. We thought about moving again, starting over. But where would we go? She found us here. She was always there, a part of us, a shadow that followed. We started looking at each other differently, a quiet question in our eyes. Was she always there, in our lives, before Highway 49, before we even knew? The terror became a quiet hum, a constant static in the back of our minds. We tried to ignore it, to live our lives, but it was like trying to ignore a fly buzzing in your ear. It just got louder, more insistent. We clung to each other tighter. Our bond was stronger now, forged in shared fear, but it was a heavy bond. We didn't laugh much anymore. The joy had been slowly drained away. replaced by a constant cold anxiety. Every sound was amplified. Every shadow deepened. Then came the night of the storm. The wind howled outside. Rain lashed against the windows. The kind of storm that makes you feel tiny and helpless. The power flickered, then went out. The house plunged into darkness. A thick, inky blackness. Only the flashes of lightning lit up the room, making shadows dance. Kathy screamed. A short, sharp sound. I turned to her. She was pointing, her finger shaking, towards the window, outside, in the flashes of lightning, among the tall, swaying trees in our backyard. I saw it. A small figure, standing still, pale blue dress, long, dark hair, staring up at the house. Annabelle. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt squeezed. It was impossible. She was outside, in our yard, in Illinois, not Nebraska, not Highway 49. Kathy was sobbing now, her body shaking uncontrollably. I grabbed her, held her tight, my eyes fixed on the window, waiting for another flash of lightning. But the flashes stopped. The darkness outside was total again, only the sound of the wind and rain. Was she still there? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, under a blanket, in the dark living room, listening to the storm, listening for anything else. Anything. But there was nothing. Only the sound of the rain, and our own pounding hearts. The next morning, the sun rose. Weakly, through the clouds. The yard looked normal, just wet. The trees swayed gently, no sign of anything out of place. But we both knew. It had been real. This was our life now, a quiet, terrifying existence. Always waiting, always watching, always wondering. When would she appear next? What would she do? We thought about leaving, selling the house, but the thought of driving again, of another long road trip, it filled us with a fresh wave of terror. We couldn't do it. We were trapped. Trapped in our house. Trapped by our fear. Trapped by the memory of Highway 49. And the girl. Sometimes, late at night, I hear it. A faint scraping sound, like small, bare feet, walking on the hardwood floor upstairs. Slowly. Delicately. I pretend I don't hear it. I squeeze my eyes shut. I pull the blanket tighter. Kathy is usually asleep, or pretending to be. She doesn't make a sound. We've learned to live with it. This ghost, this memory, this constant reminder. It's part of our home now, part of our family, a cold, silent member. Last night I woke up to a sound. It wasn't a dream. It was real. I heard it clearly. A whisper, coming from the hallway just outside our bedroom door. A girl's voice, thin and dry, like old leaves, empty, and then a soft, deliberate tapping, like a small finger on the wood of our bedroom door, just once, and then her voice again, closer this time, right outside the door. They left me here. They say Castona is where time just slows down. It really does. Some nights I believe that with my whole heart, especially in the late autumn. That's when the streets get all wet and shiny. They reflect the streetlights like gold. The wind moves through the old houses then. It sounds like a quiet whisper, a secret being shared. It makes the hair on my arms stand up. My house sits just off Main Street. It's an old colonial kind of house. It belonged to my grandpa. He used to tell me stories on that porch. Stories about the town. Stories about the river. Now, I sit there alone with my coffee. I do it most mornings. It's a quiet habit. I can see the school clock tower right from my porch. It stands tall and proud. I watch the sun slowly show itself. It peeks through the morning mist. It feels like a painting. A sleepy, quiet painting. Castona waking up. It always felt safe. I've lived in Castona my whole life. I was born here. It was in the old hospital, down by the river. My mom said the river sounds used to lull me to sleep. I guess I'm just a Castona boy. I went to school here too. I ran through these same hallways. I even played on the same old football field. I scored my first touchdown right there, number 77, Jacob Ellery. Felt like a king that day, and now I've taught here for almost 20 years. It's a long, long time. This town is still my home, even after losing so much here. Losing Rachel, losing the hope of a regular family. My dreams of little feet running through this old house. Castona holds all those ghosts. Every street corner holds a memory. Every shop, every bend in the river. I teach chemistry at Castona High. My room is 112. It's on the 3rd floor. It's right next to the biology lab. That room always smells the same. It's like chalk and vinegar. There's also a faint bit of a chemical smell. It's there no matter how much I scrub. I think it lives in the tables. It's just part of the room now, part of my routine, part of me. I've been teaching for 18 years now. It really is a long time. It feels like forever sometimes. The faces of the students change, but the hopes in their eyes, those stay the same. I never married again after Rachel died. That was a long time ago. So long it feels like another life. The silence in the house used to be too loud. Now it's just silence. I don't have any children of my own. My students, they were the closest thing I had. They were like my kids. I watched them grow. From scared freshmen to confident seniors. It was a good feeling. Or maybe I should say they were. That feeling changed. It changed a lot. It changed everything. A coldness crept in. A deep, chilling fear. It all started with a boy named Ari Lehman. He was a shy sophomore. That means he was in 10th grade. Ari always stayed after class for a bit. He liked to ask questions. They were questions he already knew the answers to. He just wanted to talk, to connect. He was lonely, I think. A good kid. It was his way of just staying near, of wanting to talk. He had a nervous habit. He would flick his pencil between his fingers. It sounded like a little drummer. I can still hear that sound sometimes. It plays in my head. I remember his quiet smile. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow. From falling off his bike, he once told me. I still remember the last thing he ever said to me. He looked up with those big, quiet eyes. His voice was soft like a mouse. "Mr. Ellery," he asked, "do you believe in alchemy?" I laughed. I really did. I thought he was just joking around. He was a smart kid. He just shrugged and walked out. He picked up his backpack. It looked too big for him. I didn't think anything of it. Not then. I just said, "See you tomorrow, Ari." He didn't show up for school the next day. The seat in my class was empty. It felt wrong. Then he didn't show up the day after that. And the day after that. The emptiness grew. The police got involved. They said he just ran away from home. They said it happens sometimes, that teenagers get upset and leave. But Ari wasn't that kind of kid. His parents, they looked so scared. They looked tired too. Their faces were gray. They didn't even argue much with the police. They just nodded slowly. Their eyes were hollow. It was like a piece of them was gone already. It tore me up inside. A week passed, a very long week. Every day felt heavier than the last. Then Janelle Oakes disappeared. She was another one of my students, bright as a button. Janelle was so bright. She was always at the very top of her class, always. She had plans, big plans, to go to college far away, to study forensic science. Janelle loved forensic science. That's like solving mysteries with science stuff. She would talk for hours about it. Her eyes would sparkle when she talked about solving crimes. She wanted to help people. She even kept a dream journal. She wrote everything down, every dream, every thought. She showed me once, full of drawings and little poems, a very private person. Her locker was found open at school. Nothing was touched inside. Her books were all neatly stacked up. Her backpack was still there. Her favorite pen. Everything. It was like she had just stepped away for a second, but she never came back. There was just one note tucked away. It was hidden behind a textbook. It simply said, "He sees us now." The words made my blood feel cold, like ice water running through my veins. Who was he? It wasn't a joke, not anymore. This was real, and it was terrifying. The third kid was Colby Trenner. Colby didn't talk much at all. He was very quiet. He had dark, serious eyes. He watched everything. He missed nothing, but he always got perfect scores on my tests, always. He just understood. He would just nod when I explained something difficult, like it was easy for him. He vanished during a fire drill. Everyone was running outside. It was loud and confusing. The alarms blared. People pushed and shouted. Chaos. 1 minute Colby was there, right by the door. The next, he was just gone, like smoke. He left his coat. It was a new blue one. He left his phone. He even left his shoes right there, by the exit door. Just his socks on the cold floor. He was just gone. 3 students, in 3 weeks. It was a pattern, clear as day, a pattern of vanishing, a pattern of silence from the town. This wasn't normal, not for Castona, not for anywhere. This was a sickness. I felt it in my bones. It felt like something evil had come to my town. I went to talk to Principal Hargrove. He was a big man. He was always sweating a little, even when it was cold. His office always smelled like stale coffee and fear. Or maybe that was just me. He told me to stop asking questions. He told me to let the police handle it. He said concerned teachers like me just make everyone scared. He looked at me like I was making trouble, like I was the problem. His eyes were cold. They didn't match his sweaty face. They were dead eyes, like the crow's eyes would be later. I didn't realize it then. The school board sent out letters to all the families. They were very careful words, talking about personal matters and privacy. Lies. The local newspaper, the Castona Times, put out little tiny stories. They were on page 5, always, buried where no one would really notice. They always said the same thing. No foul play suspected. Every single time. It felt like a lie. A big, ugly lie. But nobody else seemed to see it. Or maybe they just pretended not to see it. That thought chilled me more. But I'm a man who looks for patterns. I see things that don't fit. And something about all this didn't fit at all. It felt very, very wrong. It felt like a bad stitch in a perfect quilt. I couldn't shake it. It stuck to me like glue. A cold, sticky feeling of dread. One night, I opened a special folder. I keep it in my desk drawer. It's the kind of folder no teacher ever wants to keep. It has notes on strange absences, kids pulled from school without reason. It has complaints from parents, whispers of strange happenings. It has notes about kids acting in a disturbing way, drawing weird pictures, saying odd things that just didn't seem right, little pieces of a puzzle. I had started it years ago. I pulled out the names of those 3 kids, Ari, Janelle, Colby. Their names felt heavy in my mind, so young, so full of life. Now just names on a page. I started digging through everything I had on them. I was looking for anything unusual, any small detail. My eyes scanned every word, every doodle on old homework, every permission slip. I stayed there for hours. The moon rose and set. The stars moved across the sky. That's when I noticed something, a small connection. It was almost hidden, a common thread, a single dark strand. They were all part of a special program. It was called the Leadership Enrichment Initiative. It sounded so grand, so important, so innocent. Too innocent. It was funded by something called the Castona Foundation. That name sounded a little grand too. It made me think of old money and hidden secrets. It wasn't part of the school's regular budget. That was strange. Very strange. Every school program has a paper trail, but not this one. In fact, there was no record of it anywhere in the school files. I looked everywhere. The old dusty boxes, the new shiny computers. Nothing. I only found one mention. It was a single line in a very old PTA newsletter. It was from years ago, from 1995. Faded ink, barely readable. It just said, "Special thanks to the Castona Foundation for their generous support." That was it, a single sentence, hidden away, like a secret. The next day, I asked around the staff lounge. I tried to sound casual, like I was just making small talk. "Hey, anyone know about the Castona Foundation?" I asked. I took a sip of my coffee. Nobody knew what I was talking about. They just shrugged and went back to their coffee, or their grating. They smiled politely, but their eyes were blank, no recognition, except Ms. Priscilla Dean. She was the school librarian. She was an older lady. She had kind eyes, but a very sharp mind. She knew everything that went on. She sat up straight. Her hands, usually busy with books, rested on the table. She looked at me. Her gaze was direct. She leaned in real close. Her voice dropped to a whisper, so low I almost didn't hear it. "That program's not for kids like yours, Jacob," she said. Her eyes held a deep sadness. It was like she knew too much, like she carried a heavy weight on her shoulders, like the sadness of 100 forgotten stories. It pulled at my heart. "What does that mean, Miss Dean?" I asked her. My stomach felt a little cold. A sense of dread started to creep in. A cold spider crawling up my spine. What did she know? She shook her head slowly. Her gaze was steady, but her face was tight, like she was holding something back. "It means keep your head down, Jacob. Some truths rot the soul." Her words felt heavy, like stones in my pocket. She turned back to her book. Her hands trembled slightly, just for a second. I really should have stopped right there. I know that now. A part of me wanted to just drop it, to listen to her, to stay safe, to go back to teaching chemistry, to forget the hollow eyes of Eerie's parents, the haunting note from Janelle, Colby's empty shoes. But another part, a stubborn part, just wouldn't let go. I couldn't leave those kids alone. Not after what I had seen. Not after those hollow eyes of their parents. It wasn't just about them. It was about all the others. The whispers. The vague stories. I didn't stop. I couldn't. It felt like I owed it to Ari, Janelle, and Colby, and to every other child who had vanished, who would vanish. I started staying late at school after everyone else went home. The hallways were dark and quiet. The janitor, old Mr. Henderson, would just shake his head when he saw my car still there. My footsteps echoed. The sound bounced off the empty lockers. Every shadow seemed to stretch and move. Every creak of the old building sounded like a whisper. I would go into the main office. The big, usually busy office. It felt creepy at night. The moon shone through the tall windows, casting weird shapes on the floor. I checked old attendance records, club rosters, anything I could find, old student files, boxes of forgotten papers, dusty yearbooks. I was looking for any mention of the foundation's name, any small clue. The air in the office felt old and dusty at night. The only sounds were the hum of the old computers and the quiet rustle of papers as I went through them. I felt like a ghost, walking through the empty school, searching for answers. I had to know. I spent whole nights there, drinking cold coffee from my thermos, my eyes burning. Then I found something. It was in a box labeled Yearbook Photos 1980s, tucked away at the very bottom, under a pile of old sports trophies. It was an old photograph, from 1987. It was a group picture, faded colors, but the faces were clear, too clear. The photo showed 10 students. They were all standing in a big circle, their arms linked, like a secret club, a hidden group. Each one of them wore the same silver medallion around their necks. It looked heavy, old. It had a strange symbol on it, something I didn't recognize, a twisted knot. One face in the picture stood out to me. It was a young Alan Trenor. That was Colby's father. His hair was darker then, but his eyes were the same, cold and serious. He looked so serious even back then, even as a teenager. His eyes were intense. My heart jumped a little. This was a link, a real link, a strong one. A chill ran through me, like an icy finger down my back. I knew Alan Trenor. He was on the Castona City Council. He was a very important man in our town. He was one of the people who ran things. He had a lot of power. He spoke at all the town meetings. He shook hands. He smiled. A perfect citizen. I looked at the other faces in the photo. 2 other people from that same picture. They were also on the city council now. It sent a chill down my spine. A cold, hard chill. The mayor. The head of the police department. All in that photo. All part of it. The next day I decided I had to do something risky. Something very risky. Something dangerous. But I couldn't stop. I drove out to the Trenor estate. It was an enormous house, a mansion, behind high gates, and manicured lawns. It looked perfect. It sat out by the lake. It was a huge, fancy place, like something from a movie. Too perfect, too clean, like it was hiding something. I told the person at the gate that I was just checking in on Colby's academic progress. It was a lie, a really bad lie. My voice shook a little, but the guard just nodded. But I had to get inside. I had to see. I had to talk to Alan Trenor. Alan Trenor came to the door himself. He looked really pale. His face was almost white. His eyes looked like they hadn't slept in days or weeks. He was jumpy. His eyes darted around, like he expected something to jump out at him. His hands had faint red marks on them, just on his knuckles. It looked like blood that had been scrubbed really hard, but not all the way clean. It made me feel sick. He saw me looking at his hands. He quickly put them behind his back. "You should leave," he said. His voice was flat and cold, like a stone. "You're not family, Mr. Ellery." He meant it as a warning, a very clear one. I tried to keep my voice steady. It was hard. My throat felt tight. "Where's Colby, Mr. Trenor?" I asked him directly. I watched his face very carefully. His face changed then. It got even paler. His eyes looked hollow, like he was looking right through me, or through a ghost. A deep, deep sadness, a terrible kind of acceptance. "He's somewhere safe," he whispered. His voice was barely a sound. "Somewhere clean." The way he said clean made my skin crawl. It didn't sound good at all. It sounded wrong, deeply wrong, like he was talking about something dead, or worse. He closed the door slowly. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot. That night, I came home. My house felt like a tomb, silent and cold. Even the old familiar smells were gone, replaced by a feeling of dread. I found a white envelope pushed under my front door. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't junk mail. It was too precise. There was no return address on it. Just a plain white envelope. My name wasn't even on it. Inside was a photo. It was a picture of me. I was sitting at my desk in room 112, just the night before. I was grading papers, just like I do every night. My head was bent down, my glasses slipping on my nose. A normal moment. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been inside my room, inside my school. The hair on my neck stood up. A cold wave of fear washed over me. It started in my head. It spread down my arms. My hands started to shake. I dropped the picture. It fluttered to the floor. It was a warning, clear as the missing crow's eyes would be. The very next day, a dead crow was found. It was hanging from the flagpole, right outside the school. It was hanging there, dark and still, like a bad flag. Its eyes were missing, just empty sockets, staring at the empty sky. It felt like a message, a clear warning, a direct threat. It said, "Stop," or else. That's what it said to me, as loud as a shout. Still, I couldn't stop. The fear was there, yes. It was a cold knot in my gut, a constant gnawing feeling, but it mixed with a strong need to understand, to help those kids, to get answers, to make it stop. I couldn't just walk away now, not after what I had seen, not after Colby's father, not after the picture, not after the crow. I was in too deep. I visited Miss Dean again at the library. She looked at me with those sad, knowing eyes. She didn't ask why I was there. She just knew. She saw the fear in me. She saw I was shaking. But she also saw that I wouldn't give up. She saw the fire in my eyes, the stubbornness. This time, she didn't just warn me. She did something else, something brave, something that could put her in danger too. I knew it. She took me to a locked archive. It was a hidden room beneath the library, a secret room, full of forgotten things. It was dark and damp down there. The air smelled of old paper and dust. It was like breathing in the past, like stepping into a tomb of secrets. There were stacks and stacks of dust-covered boxes. They reached the ceiling, old PTA meeting notes, attendance ledgers from decades ago. Every paper felt fragile, brittle with age, each one a piece of history. It felt like stepping back in time, into a secret history of Castona, a history the town wanted to forget, or bury. We started pulling out boxes. My hands got dirty from the dust. My fingers felt stiff. The air was heavy with unspoken words, with forgotten names. We looked through the faded handwriting in the old ledgers. My eyes burned, hour after hour, looking for a pattern, looking for a connection. I found 6 other students. All their names were there. They were from previous decades, from the 50s, the 70s, the 90s, spaced out like clockwork. All of them had gone missing, just like Eerie, Janelle, and Colby, and every single one was tied to the Castona Foundation. Their names were on old forms, on strange applications, on dusty enrollment lists. The pattern was so much bigger than I thought. It was like a giant web, a spider web stretching across time, catching the innocent. She whispered to me. Her voice was barely a breath, a soft, sad sound, like a prayer or a lament. She pointed to names on the dusty pages. The foundation isn't a scholarship program, Jacob. It's a right. The word right hung in the air. It sounded ancient and scary. It wasn't about learning. It was about something much darker, something old and hungry, something that demanded payment. And the payment was children. It made my blood run cold, colder than the crow's empty eye sockets, colder than the grave, a ritual, a sacrifice. The next Friday night, I followed a new lead. It came from one of Ms. Dean's old maps, a hand-drawn map, with faded pencil marks. It took me to the old Wilverton Church. It was a long abandoned place, rumored to be haunted. No one went there anymore, not for decades. It sat just beyond the very edge of town, where the wild woods started to take over everything. The trees grew thick, blocking out the sky. The old road leading to it was overgrown. Vines twisted around the signs. The asphalt was cracked, broken, like the town didn't want anyone to find it. I felt a knot of fear in my stomach, a tight, hard ball, but I had to go. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. I brought a few things with me, a bright flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, a heavy baseball bat. Just in case. It felt good in my hands, a familiar weight. From my old baseball days, and my father's old revolver. It felt cold and heavy in my hand. It was a tool, just in case, a last resort, a promise to myself. The woods were dark and quiet. The trees stood like tall, dark figures, watching me, their branches like long, gnarled arms, reaching out. The path was barely there. Every rustle of leaves made me jump, every snap of a twig. My own breathing sounded too loud, my own footsteps. Finally, I saw it. The church stood against the dark sky. Its windows were broken, like empty eyes, staring out at nothing, staring at me, a skeleton against the setting sun, dark and forbidding. I pushed open the heavy, creaking wooden doors. The sound echoed in the silence, like a scream or a warning. Inside, it was even colder. A chill went straight to my bones. The air was still, heavy, like time had stopped inside. The pews, where people used to sit and pray, had all been torn out. They were gone, just bare, dusty floorboards, and a strange, sickly sweet smell. In their place, there were 13 stone pedestals. They were arranged in a wide spiral shape on the floor, roughly carved, ancient-looking, like they'd been there for centuries. Each one had a strange symbol carved into it. They were deep and old. Some looked like old alchemy symbols, like things from ancient books. Some looked like old Celtic signs, swirls and knots, dark and twisting. Some were ancient and impossible for me to even recognize. They looked wrong, so very wrong, like shapes from a nightmare, designed to confuse and frighten. In the very center of the spiral, there was a brazier. It was a large metal bowl, like for burning something. It was still warm to the touch, faintly warm, like hot embers had just been there. A faint, smoky smell hung in the air, a sweet, cloying smoke. Someone had been here very recently, very, very recently, maybe still here, and carved above it, high on the wall, were words in Latin. I could read Latin, a little, from old college classes. It came back to me. It said, Viator oculorum, conservator sanguinis. I translated it in my head. My heart hammered. like a drum in my chest. It meant the watcher of eyes, the keeper of blood. My blood ran cold. A watcher, a keeper. What kind of eyes? What kind of blood? Then I heard them. Voices. They were chanting. It was a low, hollow sound, like a drone, hypnotic and chilling. It felt ancient. It was coming from right beneath the altar. A shiver ran down my spine. My skin crawled. Every hair on my body stood up. I gripped the bat tighter. My knuckles were white. My hand was shaking. But I forced myself to move, to find the source. I found a trap door. It was hidden by some old broken stones, heavy, heavy stones, moss-covered, almost impossible to see. It was heavy, but I managed to lift it. My muscles screamed. Every part of me ached. A dark, narrow opening showed beneath. It dropped straight down, into the earth, into the unknown, into the dark heart of Castona. I had to go down. I shone my flashlight down the steps. The air felt thick and still, like a blanket, pressing down on me. It smelled like damp earth and something else, something metallic, like old blood. What I saw down there changed me. It changed me forever. It stripped away everything I thought I knew. About Castona, about people, children, so many children. Not just the ones who had gone missing from school. Eerie, Janelle, Colby. I saw them all. And more. There were others too. Younger ones, older ones. Their faces pale. They were all lying still, like they were asleep. But in a weird way. Their eyes were open, but they didn't see. They stared blankly at the ceiling. They were in a sedated trance. Not fully aware, not really there. Like dolls, limp and lifeless, but breathing. Their necks were marked. There were strange dark runes drawn on their skin. Symbols I'd seen before. On the pedestals, on the medallion. Ink black marks on their pale skin. Twisted lines, ancient warnings. A circle of robed figures stood around them. They were all wearing long, dark robes, made of rough, dark cloth. Their forms almost melted into the shadows. Their faces were hidden in shadows, under deep hoods, dark holes. One of them was speaking. His voice was deep. It filled the small space. It vibrated through the cold earth, into my bones. He spoke in a tongue that sounded older than any language I had ever heard. It wasn't English. It wasn't Latin. It was something else. Something truly old. Something wrong. A guttural clicking sound, like bones grinding together. Then I knew that voice. My stomach clenched. It was Principal Hargrove. His voice, so familiar in the school halls. Here, it was twisted and dark, full of a terrible power, an ancient malice. He was one of them. The principal, the head of my school, the man who told me to stop asking questions. He was the monster. It was a sacrificial rite. Not for death. I realized it with a fresh wave of horror, a new, deeper horror, worse than death. It was for something called purification, a cleansing, a transformation. This cult believed certain children, those they called touched by impurity, could become vessels, empty vessels, ready to be filled, vessels for a higher order of beings, horrible things, from some dark place, things I couldn't even imagine. But I felt their presence, heavy, cold. These children were given over willingly by their own parents, the same parents who cried at the police station, the same parents who looked tired, in exchange for things like wealth, for status, for political power in Castona, for seats on the city council, for a clean house by the lake. It was a terrible trade, a monstrous deal. They gave up their children for a little piece of the pie, a little comfort, a little power. I made a sound, a quiet gasp, a small choke, a sound of pure horror, of disbelief. They heard me. All their heads snapped toward the dark, toward me, like a single monstrous being, their hoods turning as one. I didn't think. I just ran. I dropped the flashlight. It clattered down the steps, rolling and bouncing. The beam danced madly, revealing them for a second. I ran as fast as I could, up the steps, out the trap door. My lungs burned, like fire inside my chest. My heart felt like it would burst. I barely escaped through the back. There was an old, forgotten cemetery path there. The tombstones were crumbling, broken and mossy. I ran over them. My feet caught on roots. My body screamed with effort, stumbling in the dark, tripping over old stones. My heart hammered. I ran and ran, not stopping until I was far away, back on the main road. The fresh night air felt like ice in my burning lungs. My lungs burned, like fire inside my chest. My heart felt like it would burst. My legs ached. Every muscle screamed. As soon as I could, I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad. I fumbled with it, dropped it once, picked it up. I called the police. My voice was tight, hard to breathe, gasping for air, trying to make sense. I tried to tell them everything about the church, the children, Hargrove, the cult, the symbols, the Latin, the chanting. They sounded confused. The person on the phone told me to wait. They said officers would come, to stay where I was, to calm down. But when they arrived at the old church, it was empty. Completely empty. No trace of anyone. No sound. No light. It was clean. Sanitized. Like no one had ever been there. Not a single dusty print. The brazier was cold. The air clear. The trap door hidden again. It was like I had dreamed it all up. A bad, scary dream. They looked at me like I was crazy. Their eyes were cold. Like Hargrove's. Like the eyes of the people in the photo. Dead and judging. They said I was hallucinating. Seeing things. They said it was just stress. Burnout from my job. They dismissed everything I said. Like it was nothing. Like I was a broken man. And maybe I was. They put me on administrative leave the very next day. They said I needed to rest. They wanted me to take a break. A long one. They told me to go home. To rest. But it wasn't rest they wanted for me. They wanted me silent. Quiet. Out of the way. To forget. To give up. To disappear. My neighbors won't look me in the eye anymore. They turn away when I walk by. They cross the street. They pretend not to see me. They look at the ground, or across the street, like I have a disease, or like they know, and they're scared. My phone, I know it's tapped. Every call, every message. I can hear the clicks. Faint, unnatural sounds. On the line. My mail is tampered with. Letters opened. Nothing feels safe. Not anymore. Even my own home, my sanctuary. It felt like a cage. Can't even prove Mrs. Dean ever worked at the school. Her records are all gone, like she was erased. Just like the church, it's like she never existed, like she was a ghost. They are erasing everyone who knows. It's like the cult has touched everything. The whole town, Castona, it's all part of it. The roots go deep, deep into the earth, deep into the past. But I know what I saw. I replay it in my mind every night. Over and over. The children, their blank eyes, Hargrove's voice, the symbols, the metallic smell, the chilling chant. I know it was real. I know it. And I'm not done. Not yet. Not while children are still disappearing. Not while this evil lives. 3 months later. It's autumn again. The leaves are turning gold. They're getting wet and shiny on the streets. The wind whispers through the empty branches. A lonely sound. I live out of my car now. It's cold sometimes. The heater barely works. My old sedan, my only shelter, my clothes in a duffel bag. The city took my house. They said I didn't pay the taxes. But I know it's because I spoke up. They wanted me to have nothing left. To be alone. To give up. To break me. To make me disappear too. I spend my days driving around, staying on the move, never in one place too long. I upload videos to the internet. I do it anonymously, so they can't track it back to me easily. I find free Wi-Fi in obscure places, late at night, hidden in the shadows. I share documents, photos, files, everything I can find. The old yearbook picture, the Latin translation, my notes from the archives. I scream into the dark, on the internet, in my car, to the empty sky, to anyone who will listen, to the darkness itself. I hope someone somewhere will listen. Just one person, to see what I saw, to believe me. I know they're watching me. I can feel their eyes, all the time. A constant pressure on my back, a chill on my skin. Sometimes I see cars following me. Dark cars. tinted windows. They blend in, but I see them. I know. Sometimes I feel a prickle on the back of my neck, like I'm being watched. When I pull over, when I stop to eat, they're there. One night I was driving through town. It was late. The streets were quiet. The streetlights cast long, strange shadows. The air was cold and damp. A fog was rolling in from the river, wrapping around the old houses. I saw a black SUV pass me by. Its windows were tinted dark, too dark, but for a second, the light from a street lamp hit the glass just right. Just a flash, a flicker, but it was enough. I saw a face inside. It was Colby, my student, my quiet student. He was in the back seat, staring straight ahead. His eyes looked like glass. They were empty, lifeless, no spark. The Colby I knew was gone, replaced by a blankness, and there, etched into his cheek, was one of those strange symbols, the same ones from the church, from the pedestals, from the medallion. It was faint, like a tattoo, a brand. My heart shattered. It broke into a million tiny pieces. My breath caught in my throat, a sob that wouldn't come out. He was one of them now, a vessel, just like Hargrove said. His body was there, but his soul was gone, used, empty. He was gone. The Colby I knew, gone. My world tilted. The fear was crushing. But something else rose up, a desperate, burning anger, a raw resolve. But one day, the world will believe me. I have to keep going. I have to believe that. I have to. One day they'll listen. They have to, because children are still disappearing in Castona. The news doesn't say much, but I know. I still hear the whispers, the quiet talks in the shadows, mothers crying softly at the grocery store, empty swings in parks. And I've learned something from all of this, something truly terrible, something that will haunt me until the day I die. The most dangerous monsters don't live in fairy tales. They don't hide under your bed. They don't have sharp teeth or glowing eyes. They sit beside us in church. They smile. They look like normal people. They run the town. They make the laws. They shake your hand. They tuck our children into bed at night. They tell them they love them. They kiss their foreheads. And they sell them. And they smile. A secret, terrible smile. A cold, knowing smile as the children sleep, waiting for the next rite until it's too late for everyone, for every child, for every town, and the eyes of Castona will watch and keep their secrets. I didn't fall asleep. I remember that clearly. I was on the train, heading home from a long shift. You know, working as a night nurse at St. Vivian's can really drain you. My eyelids felt heavy, but I was awake. The train car was mostly empty, just the low hum of the engine and the click-clack of the wheels on the tracks. Outside, the city lights blurred into long streaks of color. It was late, really late. I was thinking about my bed, how good it would feel to just collapse into it. My mind was tired, but my body felt wired. That's how it often is after working all night. Then something really strange happened. It started with a weird smell, like old metal, rusty and sharp, filling the air around me. It was so strong, it made my nose wrinkle. It was a smell that didn't belong on a train. I looked around the car, trying to find where it was coming from. Nobody else seemed to notice. The smell got stronger, like a forgotten old penny left in the rain for too long. Next came this awful sound, a sharp whine, high-pitched and piercing right into my ears. It made my teeth ache. It felt like someone was scraping metal, really loud, right next to my head. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound went right through me. My head started to throb, a dull ache behind my eyes. I squinted, trying to make sense of the sudden noise. I looked out the window, trying to figure out where it came from. The city lights were still there, but they seemed to shimmer, like they were underwater. My vision felt blurry for a moment. A huge shadow, quick and dark, swept across the glass. Just a flicker, like something massive had just flown right past the train, blocking the moonlight for a second. It was unsettling. It was too big to be a bird, too fast to be a cloud. It was just a flash, but it made my stomach drop. My heart gave a hard thump in my chest. What was that? I leaned closer to the window, but there was nothing there. Then, everything went black. Not just the train lights, but a deep, complete darkness. It wasn't like closing my eyes. It was like the world just turned off, and I was falling into nothing. No sound, no light, just a total, empty void. It felt like I was falling for a very long time, though I know now it couldn't have been. My head spun, my stomach churned. There was no up or down, just a swirling dark. I woke up on cold, hard wood. My back ached, and my head throbbed. The pain was sharp, like I had been hit. My eyes blinked open slowly, trying to adjust to a new light. For a second, I thought I was still on the train. Maybe I'd slipped off the seat and hit the floor. But the floor was too solid, too cold. It wasn't the bouncy floor of a train. When I opened my eyes fully, I saw this huge, fancy chandelier above me. It was old, dusty, with lots of crystals hanging down. But it wasn't moving, not even a tiny sway. It hung perfectly still, even though my head was throbbing. And the room around me felt like it was breathing. A soft, slow inhale, then an exhale, like a giant, quiet chest. It was weird, because nothing was actually moving. The curtains were still, the dust motes in the light were still. It just felt alive, like the very air in the room had its own slow, heavy heartbeat. It wasn't a comforting feeling, it was creepy. I held my breath, trying to listen for it again. My name is Mark, and this was no dream. This was real. I pushed myself up slowly, my muscles stiff and sore. My clothes felt dirty, sticky with something I didn't want to think about. I looked around the room, and a cold wave of fear washed over me. I knew, right then, I was in a lot of trouble. This wasn't home. This wasn't any place I'd ever seen before. 7 of us woke up in that room. It was like a really old parlor, you know, the kind you see in old movies. It was huge, with high ceilings and fancy trim that was now broken. It was crumbling and ancient, like it hadn't been lived in for 100 years. The air was thick with dust, old smells, and something else, a faint, sweet smell, like old flowers left to die. The wallpaper was peeling everywhere. It used to be some fancy design, maybe flowers or elegant swirls, but now it was just faded strips hanging down. You could see the plaster underneath, stained and cracked. There were old portraits on the walls, too, just faces, looking out from dusty, tarnished frames. Their eyes seemed to follow me, no matter where I looked. It made my skin crawl. They looked like they knew something we didn't. In one corner, there was this massive grandfather clock. It reached almost to the ceiling, its dark wood carved with fancy designs. But it wasn't ticking. Not a sound came from it. It just stood there, silently watching us, like a giant, blind sentinel. I saw the others slowly stirring, groaning, rubbing their heads. Everyone looked just as confused and scared as I felt. Some coughed from the dust. It was a messy pile of startled people, all waking up from the same bad dream. First there was Thomas. He looked like a janitor wearing work boots and a faded jacket. He was a big guy, heavy set, with a gruff face that looked like it had seen a lot of hard days. He was the first one to push himself up, grunting. He rubbed his temples, his eyes squinting at the dim light. He looked strong, like someone who could handle tough situations, but even he had a confused, scared look in his eyes. Then I saw Gretchen. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, all neat and fancy, even though she was lying on a dusty floor. Her hair was still perfect. She looked cold, like she was always in charge, even when she was waking up. Her eyes were narrow, already assessing everyone in the room. She didn't look scared, not really. More annoyed, like this was an inconvenience for her. She sat up stiffly, brushing dust from her expensive clothes. A young kid, Simon, was next. He looked like a teenager, maybe 17 or 18. His clothes were casual, a graphic t-shirt and worn jeans. He was really jittery, kind of shaking as he sat up. He just huddled there, quiet, not saying a word. His eyes darted around like a trapped rabbit. He looked so young, too young to be in a place like this. He pulled his knees up to his chest, trying to make himself small. Close by was Eliza, an older woman, maybe 70 or so. She was still in her wheelchair, which was the first thing that really made me wonder. How did she even get here in her chair? Did someone put her in it? She looked composed, her hands folded calmly in her lap, but her eyes held so much fear. A deep, quiet fear, like she was trying to hide it. She just watched us, taking it all in. Nina was easy to spot. She was a college student, I guessed, with a big hoodie pulled up over her head. Her dark hair fell over her face. She had this cynical look, like she'd seen it all, and her lips were already twisted into a sarcastic frown. She pushed herself up with a groan, muttering something under her breath that I couldn't quite hear. She looked tired, angry, and ready to snap at anyone who looked at her funny. And then, a priest. He looked to be in his mid-40s, wearing a simple black shirt with a white collar. His eyes were really haunted, deep and sad, like he carried a lot of heavy burdens. He was quiet, just watching everyone with a solemn expression. He stood up slowly, crossing himself. He looked at each of us, his gaze lingering, as if he was already praying for us. He seemed out of place, yet also, somehow, exactly where he should be. And finally, me. Mark. Just a night nurse from St. Vivian's. My scrubs were wrinkled, my face felt rough, and like that old woman on the ventilator back at St. Vivian's, I had my own regrets. Big ones that weighed on me. We all looked at each other, silent, trying to figure out what was happening. No one spoke for a long minute. Just the sound of our breathing and that weird, soft breath of the room. It felt like the house was watching us, waiting. Tomas finally cleared his throat. "What is this place?" His voice was gruff, a little shaky. Gretchen just folded her arms, her expression unreadable. Nina rolled her eyes. The priest, Father Michael, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but tired. "I believe we are trapped." His gaze swept around the dusty parlor, then settled on the huge grandfather clock. We tried to open the door, the big wooden one that looked like the main way out, but it was stuck fast, like it was part of the wall. Tomas pushed against it with his big shoulders, but it didn't budge. We banged on the windows, but they were thick, dusty glass that didn't even rattle. It was like they were made of solid rock. No matter how hard we hit them, they just stayed still. We were trapped. There was no way out. The big grandfather clock just stood there, still silent. But on its face, numbers started to glow, a faint, eerie blue light. It showed midnight. The house had its own way of telling time. And it was starting now. The minutes crawled. Every tick that didn't happen on that clock made the silence louder. We tried talking, whispering, asking each other if anyone knew anything. Nobody did. We were all just random people thrown together. Thomas kept trying the door, pulling and pushing. Gretchen pulled out her phone, but there was no signal, of course. Nina just kept muttering sarcastic comments under her breath about how this was some messed up reality show. Simon stayed huddled in a corner, pulling his knees to his chest. He kept his head down, looking at the floor. He seemed almost too scared to breathe. Eliza, in her wheelchair, just watched us with wide, fearful eyes, saying nothing. Father Michael started praying quietly, his lips moving without a sound. He looked up at the ceiling, then at each of us. His face was filled with a deep sadness, like he already knew what was coming. And me? I just kept thinking about that old woman, Mrs. Henderson, my biggest regret. The guilt felt like a physical weight in my stomach, twisting and turning, making me feel sick. I tried to push it down, but it just kept bubbling up. Then, just as the clock glowed midnight, even brighter, a new door, one we hadn't even noticed, slowly, silently opened. It was hidden behind a peeling section of wallpaper, blending in perfectly. It was dark inside, like a black hole. No light escaped from it. It was just a gaping void. The air around it felt colder, heavier. A chill went through the room. The voice, the house's voice, deep and ancient, like rumbling stone, echoed around us. It didn't come from any one place. It was everywhere. It felt like it was inside my head and all around us at the same time. It wasn't human. It wasn't mechanical. It was just the house, and it spoke. It said, "Midnight." The priest. Father Michael stiffened, his eyes wide with a deep, knowing dread. He slowly pushed himself up. He knew. He looked at us, a quiet apology in his eyes. He walked toward the open door. We all watched him, silent, unable to move. He hesitated for a second, then stepped into the darkness. The door slid shut behind him, without a sound. The wait was unbearable. Every second felt like an hour. We just stood there, listening. No sounds came from behind that door, just the eerie breath of the house, that slow, quiet inhale and exhale that never stopped. The silence was the worst part. It pressed down on us. We could only imagine what was happening in there. What confession was being forced from him? What horrors was he seeing? After what felt like forever, maybe 20 minutes, the door opened again. Father Michael walked out, but he wasn't the same. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He looked broken, like he had just aged 20 years. His eyes were still haunted, but now they held a deeper, more profound sadness. He didn't say a word. He just sank to the floor, leaning against a wall, and stared blankly ahead. His hands were clasped, trembling, as if still in prayer. He just kept whispering something we couldn't hear. He looked like a man who had faced his worst nightmare and survived, but at a terrible cost. We didn't dare ask what happened. We could see it on his face. It was too awful to speak about. Then a new number glowed on the clock. 1 a.m., and the house spoke again, its voice still deep and unchanging. Nina jumped, startled. Her sarcastic smirk vanished, replaced by pure fear. She looked like a trapped animal. She tried to laugh, a nervous, shaky sound. "Oh, come on. Me? What did I do?" But her voice betrayed her. She was terrified. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to us. She walked towards the door, trying to look brave, but her hands were shaking. She disappeared inside, and again, the door closed with that silent, awful click. The same dark void swallowed her. We waited, just like before. The tension was thick, like fog, filling every corner of the room. We could hear Nina's muffled cries from inside. They were desperate, tearing sounds, filled with pain and anger. We heard banging, muffled thuds. It sounded like she was fighting something, hitting the walls. Then her cries turned into heartbroken sobs, like a child who had lost everything. It made my skin prickle. When she came out, she was sobbing. Big, wet tears streamed down her face, leaving streaks on her cheeks. Her hoodie was askew, her hair a mess. She stumbled and fell to her knees, burying her face in her hands. She couldn't stop shaking. She rocked back and forth, muttering, "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. She was so young." Her words were choked with tears, barely understandable. It was clear whatever she saw in there, it broke her. The clock clicked again, the blue light glowing. 2 a.m. The voice came, heavy and low. The young boy gasped, his eyes darting around wildly, looking for an escape. He looked so small, so terrified, almost like he wanted to disappear. He resisted, backing away from the open door. His breath came in ragged gasps. "No, please no," he whispered, his voice trembling. He looked truly desperate, like he was seeing ghosts. But the door opened wide, like a mouth waiting for him. The house's breath seemed to pull him towards it, an invisible force. He slowly, unwillingly, walked in, dragged by something unseen. We could hear him immediately. A guttural sob, then a high-pitched cry that made me flinch. It sounded like pure agony, then a crash, like something heavy had fallen, followed by a splash. My stomach twisted. It was quiet for a moment, then more muffled sobs, and the sound of someone choking. It was a horrible sound, like someone was drowning. We all exchanged terrified glances. What kind of room was in there? When Simon came out, he was collapsed, shaking, barely able to stand. He was sobbing, clutching his stomach as if he was sick. He was pale, his eyes wide and vacant, still seeing something terrible. He couldn't even look at us. He was broken. He whimpered, "I didn't know. I didn't mean to. It was just a joke." He kept repeating it, over and over, rocking himself. Whatever the house showed him, it was about something he did, something that ended badly. Now, it was 3 a.m. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. My palms were sweating. I knew it was coming. My turn. The air felt heavy around me. The house rumbled again, the deep, ancient voice. My legs felt like jelly. I couldn't move, even though I knew I had to. It was my turn. There was no escape. The door opened, revealing that familiar, inky blackness. It felt like a trap, specifically for me. A spotlight, just for my worst moment. My mouth was suddenly so dry. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My hands clenched into fists. I walked slowly, each step heavy, like my feet were stuck in mud. I stepped over the threshold, and the door clicked shut behind me. The silence was absolute. It wasn't dark inside. Instead, it was like stepping back in time. The air immediately smelled of hospital disinfectant, mixed with something metallic. My ears filled with the familiar beeping of machines. I was standing in ICU room 206, the room I knew so well. It was exactly as I remembered it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything look stark and cold. The familiar monitors glowed, and there she was, Mrs. Henderson, lying in the hospital bed just as she had been. Her frail body, so small and fragile under the white sheet, the ventilator tube in her mouth, breathing for her, making a soft, rhythmic whoosh hiss sound. Her chart hung at the end of the bed, the papers rustling slightly. On it, in big, clear letters, DNR, do not resuscitate, meaning, if her heart stopped, we weren't supposed to try and bring her back. The house's voice, colder and sharper than before, echoed around me. It wasn't just in my head now. It was like it came from the machines, from the walls, from Mrs. Henderson's labored breaths. She begged for her son. You waited. My blood ran cold. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. I remembered that day so clearly. It was a Monday, a long shift, and I was so tired. Her son lived far away, across the country. He was rushing to get there, taking the first flight, but she was fading fast. Her doctor said she probably wouldn't make it through the night. She wanted to say goodbye to him. She kept whispering his name. I could have called the doctor. I could have pushed for something, anything, to keep her going for just a few more hours. I could have tried to stabilize her, even just a little. But I didn't. I told myself it was mercy. I told myself she was suffering. Her heart was barely holding on, skipping beats. I knew her son wouldn't make it in time. So, I decided to wait. I waited for her heart to give out. I didn't rush anything. I didn't check her vitals more often. I didn't call the doctor for an update. I just waited for her organs to stay viable so they could be donated. I had rationalized it, told myself it was so her organs could help others, that it was the greater good, that I was doing something important. But the truth, the ugly truth, was that it was easier. It was laziness. It was detachment. Just doing my job, nothing more, nothing less, not getting emotionally involved, not pushing myself when I was tired. And it was so wrong. I knew it, deep down. The voice repeated. It kept repeating it, getting louder, sharper, twisting in my mind. Each word was a hammer blow. I could see Mrs. Henderson's face, pale and still, but in my mind, her eyes were open, wide, pleading for more time, pleading for her son, and I had ignored it. Tears started to stream down my face, hot and stinging. My chest felt tight, like a band was squeezing it, making it hard to breathe. A heavy, suffocating weight settled on me. I fell to my knees, right there in that awful, fake hospital room. The cold floor pressed against my bare knees. My hands shook as I covered my face, trying to hide from the shame. I'm sorry, I choked out, my voice raw, broken. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Henderson. I was wrong. I was selfish. I wanted to go home. I wanted her organs to be good for others. My words tumbled out, a confession, not just to the house, but to myself. The dam broke. All the guilt, all the regret I had pushed down for years came rushing out. It flooded me. I sobbed, deep, gut-wrenching sobs, the kind that leave you shaking and empty. I felt the weight of my mistake, the enormity of what I had done. I wasn't a good nurse. Not then. The room was still. The voice was silent. The beeping of the fake machines seemed to fade, becoming softer, more distant. I just knelt there, weeping, the shame burning hot in my veins. It was a fire that cleaned me out, leaving me raw. Then, slowly, the room started to fade around me. The bed, the machines, Mrs. Henderson's face. All of it dissolved into that inky darkness. The hospital smell vanished. I was alone again, truly alone in the dark. The door opened. I stumbled back into the parlor. My legs were weak, shaking so much I could barely stand. My eyes were burning, swollen from tears. My face felt sticky and cold. Everyone looked at me. They saw my tears, my shaking, my brokenness. They didn't need to ask. They knew. We were all broken now, all stained, all raw. We were all stained. The air felt heavy with our confessed sins. The room was thick with regret and sorrow. No one spoke for a long time, just the sound of our ragged breathing and the ghostly breath of the house. We huddled together, but not close. Each of us in our own world of shame. We had faced our monsters, and they were us. The clock glowed brighter, casting long, dancing shadows. The clock glowed 4 a.m., and the house spoke again, its voice as old as time. The elderly woman in the wheelchair stiffened. She looked straight ahead, her face pale but determined. Her hands, which had been resting calmly, now gripped the arms of her wheelchair tightly. A tiny tremor ran through her body. She knew it was her turn. She looked at us, a hint of something fierce in her eyes. A new door opened, this one leading into what looked like an old courtroom. Dark wood, heavy curtains, a high judge's bench. It smelled of old paper and dust, and faces, ghostly, blurry faces of young men staring down at her, accusing. The courtroom felt cold, like a tomb. Eliza rolled her wheelchair in, slowly, gracefully, as if going to her own trial. Her back was straight. The door closed, leaving us in silence once more. We just listened. We couldn't hear crying at first. Then, a low moan, like someone in pain. Then, a quiet, almost imperceptible whisper, repeating something over and over. It sounded like an apology. It stretched on, silent, then those soft, mournful sounds. We could imagine the accusing faces, the weight of judgment on her. It was a long 20 minutes. A very long 20 minutes. When Eliza came back, her composure was gone. Tears streamed silently down her wrinkled cheeks. She didn't make a sound, but her shoulders shook with a deep, quiet grief. She looked like she had just lost everything. Her hands were still clasped, but trembling violently. She sat in her wheelchair, staring at the floor, the silent tears falling. She seemed smaller, almost fragile. Her quiet suffering was just as powerful as Nina's screams or Simon's sobs. It spoke of deep, old wounds. The clock shifted. The blue light pulsed. 5 a.m. And then, the voice. Thomas. The big janitor flinched. His gruff face hardened, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He slowly pushed himself up. He looked ready to fight, but knew he couldn't. He looked at the door, then back at us, a desperate plea in his eyes. He took a heavy breath. This was the man who had looked so tough just an hour ago. Now he was just a scared father. This door opened into what looked like an old, musty garage. It smelled of oil and dust and something else, something cloying and sweet, like decay. And then I saw it, just before the door closed. A dark tarp, pulled over something that looked like a body. A small body. The outline was unmistakably that of a person, small and still. My blood ran cold. Whose body was it? Thomas walked into the garage, his shoulders slumping. He looked at the tarp, then fell to his knees beside it. We couldn't hear what he said, but we heard a raw, guttural cry, like an animal in pain. It ripped through the house, tearing at the silence. Then, there was the sound of frantic movement, like someone digging or trying to cover something up. It was sickening. Then, muffled sobs, deep and heartbroken. The sounds were heavy with sorrow and guilt. When he emerged, Thomas was hunched over, his hands clenching and unclenching. His face was blotchy, his eyes red and swollen, like he'd been crying for days. He looked utterly defeated, like all the strength had been drained from him. His shoulders shook. He walked over to a corner and simply collapsed, sitting on the floor, his head bowed. He mumbled something about, "My little girl," and, "I just wanted to fix it." It was clear. It was his daughter. 6 of us had confessed. 6 broken people, huddled in that dusty parlor, each carrying a fresh, burning wound from the house. Only Gretchen was left. She sat perfectly still, watching us, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. A cold dread started to creep in. Why hadn't she been called? Why was she so calm, so untouched by the horror that had consumed us? She looked almost pleased. It was unsettling. We looked at her, then at each other. There was a shared, unspoken question in our eyes. Something was deeply wrong. Her perfect hair, her neat suit, everything about her screamed that she was different. Gretchen seemed to feel our stares. She slowly stood up, her expensive suit still perfectly neat, not a wrinkle on it. She looked at us one by one, her eyes sharp and unsettling. There was no fear in them, just a strange, cold pride. "I don't need to confess," she said, her voice smooth and cold, like ice. "I selected you. I'm the cleanser." Her words hit me like ice water. My blood ran cold. What did she mean she selected us? We stared at her, horrified. Nina finally managed to whisper, her voice raspy, still raw from her own ordeal. Gretchen just smiled, a thin, cruel smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger, filling the silent room. "I find the weak, the guilty, and I use them. Their guilt is a tool. Their ruin is my stepping stone." My stomach clenched. It was a truly evil thing to say. She explained how she had found our stories, our hidden shames, how she had used our weaknesses, subtly, to build her own empire, her business. She fed on us. She saw our deepest regrets as chances for her. She saw our guilt as a resource, a fuel for her own climb. She looked for people with secrets, people who could be controlled. She believed she was doing the world a favor by exposing us, by making us pay. But she wasn't paying herself. She was profiting. "You see," she said, her smile widening, "your weaknesses are my strengths. Your shame is my power. I built everything on the mistakes of others." She gestured around the room, as if it was her own. We were stunned, speechless. We had been used. She had known all along. She had brought us here. The horror of the house was, in a way, her creation. She was the monster, not the house. The clock now showed 6 a.m., the final hour, and the house began to tremble. Not just the floor, but the walls, the ceiling. Dust rained down on us, thicker now, like fine ash. The chandelier above us began to shake, its crystals rattling together with a chilling sound. The portraits on the walls tilted, some falling with a quiet thud. The very air vibrated. A new door, much grander than the others, suddenly appeared on the far wall. It was huge, dark wood, intricately carved, and it swung open with a deafening creak. It led into a room made entirely of mirrors. Reflections stretched out forever, reflecting us, then reflecting us, reflecting us. It was endless, dizzying. The light from the parlor bounced off the mirrors, making the room seem to pulse. The house's voice roared, louder than ever before, shaking the very foundations of the building. She stumbled back, losing her smugness for the first time, her face twisted into pure, unadulterated fear. She shrieked, her voice high and thin, completely unlike her usual calm tone. She scrambled backward, away from the mirror room, but the house's power was too great. The mirror room was horrifying. In every reflection I saw a distorted, bloody version of myself. My face was pale, my eyes wide with terror, and then, slowly, my reflection changed. My own face twisted, morphing into Gretchen's. Her cold, assessing eyes stared back at me, but they were filled with a deep, silent anguish. It was terrifying. Then Nina's face, her tear-streaked eyes, also became Gretchen's. Her usual sarcastic smirk was gone, replaced by a look of profound sorrow and regret. It was like seeing her soul, broken. Simon's terrified face, Eliza's sad one, Thomas's defeated one, even Father Michael's haunted one, all of them became Gretchen. Every face in every mirror was hers, but each one showed a different kind of pain, a different kind of horror. It was like looking into a gallery of her victims. All the people whose lives she had twisted, whose guilt she had used, whose ruin she had built her empire on. They were all her, in some awful, reflected way, burdened by the weight of her choices. The house spoke again, its voice booming, echoing off the countless mirrors. She fed on your guilt. She built her empire on your ruin. The debt is hers. Each word reverberated, shaking the air. Gretchen screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound that pierced through the rattling of the house. She clawed at her face, as if trying to tear off the reflections. She couldn't escape them. The mirrors began to crack. Not just one or two, but all of them, thousands of them, splintering and shattering into a million pieces. The sound was deafening, sharp like broken glass, a thunderous symphony of destruction. Dust and glass shards flew everywhere. We shielded our faces, shrinking back from the terrible sight. The entire room seemed to explode inwards, a whirlwind of sharp, glittering fragments. Gretchen was screaming louder now, trying to run, but there was nowhere to go. The reflections of her victims in the broken mirrors seemed to reach out, clawing at her, pulling her deeper into the shards. Her screams suddenly cut off, and then she vanished. Not slowly, not gracefully. It was like she was ripped apart, pulled into the shattering glass, consumed by the reflections of her own monstrous deeds. One moment she was there, screaming, a figure of terror and absolute horror, and the next, there was just empty space. Just the sound of glass tinkling to the floor. Nothing left but a faint, metallic smell. The mirrors exploded into dust, and the room was gone. The grand door slammed shut with a final, echoing thud. The house was silent again. The trembling stopped. Everything was still. We stood there, breathing heavily, covered in dust, shaken to our core. It was over. She was gone. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence, a quiet peace almost. Then, a faint light began to appear under the main parlor door. It was faint, but it was there. A golden glow, growing stronger, pushing back against the dust and the shadows. Dawn. The house had collected its debt. It had taken what it was owed. The old heavy parlor door, the one we had tried to open for hours, creaked open slowly, silently, on its own. We looked at each other, battered, exhausted, but alive. Our faces were streaked with dust and tears, our clothes torn, but there was a new light in our eyes. A wave of relief, so strong it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. We had survived. We slowly, cautiously walked out, stepping into the cool, fresh air of the morning. The old mansion stood behind us silent, looking like any other old, crumbling building. But we knew its secret. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. The air smelled of dew and fresh earth. It felt like the world had been reborn. And in a way, we had too. We didn't say much as we walked away. Just a few tired nods, some weak smiles. We were strangers who had shared the most horrible night of our lives. And in that, we were bound together. Tomas helped Eliza get her wheelchair down the steps. Nina walked with Simon, quietly, almost gently. Father Michael looked back at the house one last time, a prayer on his lips. And I just walked. I needed to breathe. 10 years have passed since that awful night. I live in a quiet cabin now, nestled near a cliff overlooking the ocean. It's a peaceful place, far away from cities and hospitals. The air smells of salt and pine, clean and fresh. The cabin is small, just enough for me. It has a big window that looks out at the endless blue of the Pacific. I often sit there, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. It helps me think. I still work as a nurse, but not in busy hospitals anymore. Not after what happened. I care for people in their homes. People who are sick, or old, or just need a gentle hand. People who, like me, are trying to heal. They are people who can't forgive themselves for something they did. Some carry small regrets. Some carry heavy burdens, like mine. I listen to them. I try to ease their pain, not just their bodies, but their hearts too. It's my way of paying my debt, my quiet penance. I try to give them the care, the attention, the comfort I didn't give Mrs. Henderson. Every day is a step towards making things right, towards being a better person. Sometimes, when I'm with a patient, and I see a flicker of guilt in their eyes, I know, I understand. It's like we're part of the same secret club, scarred by our pasts, and I can truly help them, because I've been there. Every year, around the anniversary of that night, around the time the clock struck midnight in that terrible house, I receive letters, small, simple envelopes with no return address, but I always know who they're from. They arrive without a stamp, just placed in my mailbox. They're like whispers from another life, reminding me of that night and the people I shared it with. They are a comfort and a reminder, Tomas writes. His handwriting is big and a little clumsy, but his words are heartfelt. He's volunteering now, full-time, at rehab centers, helping people get clean and stay clean. He helps fathers who are struggling with their kids, trying to be the parent he wasn't. He talks about forgiveness, about second chances. He sounds calmer, at peace, like a heavy weight has been lifted from him. Nina writes too. Her letters are short, almost like quick notes. She became a strong activist for digital safety, teaching kids about the dangers of online forums, about being kind online. She's fighting to protect others from the kind of pain she caused, the hurt that led to that girl's suicide. She uses her experience to help others. She seems to have found her purpose. Eliza's letters are the shortest, sometimes just a line or two, beautifully written in elegant script. She confesses daily at different churches, seeking forgiveness, finding a quiet kind of peace. She helps at soup kitchens, volunteers at nursing homes. She writes about the lightness she feels, the burden finally easing. She's learned to forgive herself, one day at a time. Simon never wrote to me directly, but I heard through the grapevine from Nina that he works with bullied kids now. He helps them find their voice, helps them stand up for themselves. He helps them cope with the cruel words and actions of others. He's trying to stop what happened to him from happening to anyone else. He's using his pain to protect others, which is something special. We are all trying to pay our debts in our own ways. The house changed us. It forced us to face the worst parts of ourselves, to look at the shadows in our own hearts. And then, it let us go. It didn't just punish us. It made us see. It gave us a chance to change, to be better. But it never truly lets go. It leaves its mark. A cold, quiet reminder. Sometimes when the moon is high and full, casting long silvery shadows across the cabin floor, and the ocean outside is roaring, I wake up at exactly 3 a.m. It's the hour of my confession. The hour when I saw Mrs. Henderson's face again, when I broke down. I can feel the memory like a fresh wound, and in the deep silence of the cabin, despite the ocean's roar, I hear it. A faint tick, tick, like the silent grandfather clock finally coming alive. So quiet, but so clear. Then, a soft, slow breath, filling the room, a chill breath, like the house itself is just outside my window, watching. It's an inhale, then an exhale, slow and steady, and then a whisper, right inside my head, chilling me to the bone, making the hairs on my arms stand up. A voice I can never forget. It's deep, ancient, like rumbling stone, just like it was that night. It's a quiet reminder, a chill that settles in my soul. The house remembers. They say old houses have their own kind of breath, you know, like the wood sighs and stretches at night, floors creaking like bones, pipes muttering soft little sounds behind the walls. I always used to laugh at stuff like that. I don't anymore. I used to think it was just silly talk, just old wives' tales, just people trying to make a big deal out of nothing. Now, I know better. That house, it breathed all right. It breathed in the dark. I didn't pick this townhouse because it looked nice, it was just cheap, and it was mine. That was the main thing. I was pretty broke back then. I'd been bouncing around for a while, you know, couch surfing, renting tiny rooms, never really having a place to just call my own. This house felt like a fresh start. I was living in a tiny apartment before, too small for me and my thoughts. So when I saw this place, I jumped on it fast, didn't even think twice. It was a no-brainer. It was in a part of town nobody really went to anymore. Old buildings, broken streets. Some people might have called it creepy, but I just saw cheap rent. It was one of those old row homes stuck deep in a forgotten part of the city. Tall and skinny, like a house that grew too fast. People usually get places like that from their grandma, or they end up wishing they hadn't bought it. This one was different, though. The ad said, distressed property. That just meant it needed a lot of work. But the price, man, the price was a steal. Mine was different, though. I just got a really good deal. Way too good, actually. But I didn't ask questions back then. I really should have. I saw it once, looked inside fast, and signed the papers. Didn't even wait a day. I was so excited to have my own four walls, my own space. The street itself felt tired, you know. Cracked sidewalks and tall, narrow houses all pressed together like they were leaning on each other for support. Not many cars went by. Even the air felt old, like it had been sitting there for too long. Dust motes danced in the little sunlight that poked through the gaps in the buildings. It was the kind of quiet that felt heavy, not peaceful, like the air itself was holding its breath. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heartbeat too loud in your ears. It was the kind of quiet that made you feel like you were the only person left in the whole wide world. That kind of quiet. It was like living inside a bell. At first, it was just quiet, like a heavy kind of quiet. The kind city houses get when nobody's lived in them for too long, everything covered in dust, like old skin. The floors creaked under my feet, every step echoed. I heard tiny skittering sounds behind the walls. Just mice, I told myself. Just little tiny mice. Dust motes danced in the few sunbeams that pushed through the grimy windows. They looked like tiny lost stars. The whole place smelled like old paper and something else, something sweet and earthy. It was like a museum of forgotten things. Every corner held a tiny piece of somebody else's life. But there was no joy in it, just emptiness. I found some old toys in dark corners where the sun never hit. Little wooden soldiers missing their heads, and a cracked doll smiling at the cracked wall. Made you wonder who lived there before. The doll's dress was faded, its hair a tangled mess. It looked like it had been crying for a long time. Just sitting there, waiting for someone to find it. I picked up the doll once. Its plastic skin felt cold and rough. Its eyes stared right through me. I put it back down real fast. It felt wrong to touch it. It was like the doll was watching me, judging me. Or maybe it was just sad. Sad for the people who had left it behind. Sad for what was to come. The attic door was already there, way up high on the third-floor landing. It was just a square cut right into the ceiling, flat against the peeling paint. A old, frayed string hung down from it, like an invitation. It was just a plain wooden door, no fancy trim or anything. It looked like someone had just slapped it up there real quick. Like they were in a hurry. I remember staring up at it the first time. It looked so ordinary, just a piece of wood, but it also looked like it had always been there, watching. I swear it seemed older than the rest of the house. Darker wood, rougher edges, like it didn't belong with the other stuff, like it was from somewhere else. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another old house thing. I figured I'd get around to painting it later, or maybe just nail it shut, just get it out of my sight. I had so much to do, you know. Boxes to unpack, dust to clear. The attic door was way down on my list, way down low. I didn't know when I first noticed it started opening on its own. It wasn't like a big bang or anything, not like that. It was very, very quiet. It was just a tiny crack at first. So small I almost didn't see it, like a spider's web in the corner of your eye. You almost miss it. It was super subtle, you know. I'd hear it at night, most times around 3 a.m. That slow, groaning sound of old wood moving, like it was fighting itself. It sounded like an old man trying to stand up from a deep sleep. A painful kind of groan. A slow, drawn-out sound that just went on and on. It sounded like a tired sigh, then a stretch. Like the house was waking up. Or maybe it was just getting ready for something. I didn't like that thought at all. It was like the house was getting ready to do something bad. Something it had been planning for a long, long time, and I was just there to watch. I'd check it in the morning, always thinking it would be shut tight again. But every time, that small square would be hanging open, just an inch or two, the string swaying a little, like someone had just let go of it. It was like a tiny eye looking down on the house, always open, always watching. No matter how many times I closed it, I tried to push it closed once. It felt heavy, like pushing against a solid wall. It wouldn't budge past that inch, like it didn't want to be fully shut. It felt like something was holding it from the other side, something big and strong, something that didn't want the door to close. I tried to tell myself it was just drafts, or the house settling, something normal, something easy to explain away. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. My mind kept trying to trick me into believing the normal stuff. Old house noises, I'd tell myself. Just the wind playing tricks. But the wind wasn't inside my house. The wind didn't make doors groan and then stay open. The wind didn't feel like a cold finger tracing your spine. My stomach started to get that tight feeling, like when you're about to get bad news, or when you're walking in the dark and you think you hear something, until the whispering started. It started soft, just barely there, like a breath against my ear when no one was around. It sent shivers down my arms. It was like someone was breathing right next to me, but nobody was there. Just a soft, chilling presence, like a ghost of a sound. It wasn't really words, not like that. More like the idea of words. Soft, curling noises, like someone was brushing them against the inside of my head. It was like secrets being shared, secrets you weren't meant to hear. But they were all around me, swirling in the air, trying to make sense. They'd tickle my ears while I tried to sleep, and they only came when that attic door was open. They seemed to drift right down the stairs, making the whole house feel hollow, like everything above the ceiling was just empty space. The sound was like dry leaves scraping together, or old paper rustling in a quiet room, but it had a rhythm to it, a faint kind of humming. It made me feel jumpy all the time. It felt like the house itself was talking. Not just creaking, but really talking. Telling me things I didn't want to know, things I couldn't understand. I started to feel cold spots in the house, even when the heat was on. Little patches of air that felt like winter ice. They moved around the rooms, following me. They'd touch my bare skin, soft and sudden, like a cold hand reaching out. I'd spin around, but there was never anything there, just the empty air. Sometimes I'd be sitting on the couch, watching TV, and a cold spot would just settle right on my shoulder. I'd feel my muscles tense up. It was always watching. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I put on louder music. I talked on the phone more. Anything to drown out that low, constant hum. But it always broke through. One night, I just stood there, barefoot on the cold wood floor, staring straight up at that black rectangle in the ceiling. The string moved slowly back and forth like a lazy swing. My heart was pounding a fast beat in my chest. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. Every hair on my arms felt like it was standing up straight. The light from the hallway barely touched the ceiling. The black square seemed to get darker the more I looked at it, like it was drinking the light. It brushed my fingers when I reached my hand up. I wanted to touch it, but I didn't. Some part of me knew it was a bad idea, a very, very bad idea. It was like a dare, like something was daring me to pull it, to open the door wider, to see what was inside, but a cold fear kept my hand still. "Who's there?" I whispered. I hated how scared I sounded. My voice felt so small in the big, dark house. It felt like a little mouse squeaking in a giant empty room. My voice just seemed to die in the air. The silence after it was even worse. Like my question had been swallowed by the shadows. Like it was a stupid thing to ask. The whispers didn't stop. They didn't. They got thicker, curling around my own words, like vines growing over them. It was like someone was talking, but just too quiet for me to really hear. They echoed my words back to me, but warped, twisted, like a broken record. And then they'd go back to that low, humming sound, always there. They wrapped around my voice, trying to pull it back. It was like they were trying to swallow my words whole, like my voice was just a little pebble in a vast ocean of sound. It was like they were telling me to shut up, to just listen, to pay attention to their words. The words I couldn't quite make out. The kind of voice that makes you lean in without even thinking. The kind of sound that pulls at something deep inside you, right behind your ribs, makes you feel uneasy. It felt like a memory I almost had. It felt like a dream you can't quite remember, but you know it was important, something that mattered. And it was waiting for me to remember it, just waiting, like the house was trying to remind me of something old, something that happened a long time ago, something buried deep inside its walls. I didn't sleep at all that night, not a wink, just lay there, listening, waiting. I pulled the blankets tight around me, like that could stop anything. My eyes were wide open, staring at the dark ceiling. Every shadow seemed to move. Every little creak was a giant crash. My heart kept jumping in my chest. Every little sound made me jump. The house settling, the wind outside, even my own breathing. Everything seemed too loud now, too close, too alive. I could feel my own pulse throbbing in my temples. It was a fast, scared beat. My throat felt dry and tight. It was like I was waiting for something to happen. It wasn't long before I started to notice the neighbors disappearing. It happened so slow at first, so quiet, like they just faded away. No fuss, no goodbye. Just one day, they were there. The next, they weren't. No moving trucks, no goodbye parties, just gone, like they'd never even been there at all. Old Mr. Carson was the first. He used to sit on his front steps every day, holding a small flask. He'd mumble about the good old days, always. He had a deep laugh, like a dog barking. He'd offer me a beer sometimes, or just wave. Always smelled like old cigars and something sweet. He was just a fixture on the street, always there. Then one day, his chair was just empty. His front door hung open, swinging in the morning wind, like a gaping mouth. Nothing inside but a bitter smell, like something old, left too long on a stove. I saw the wind flap the curtains inside, no lights on. The empty chair just sat there, waiting for him. But he never came back to it. I thought maybe he just moved, or went on vacation. But the smell, it just felt wrong. It was sweet and heavy, like something had died a long time ago. It wasn't a normal house smell. It was sickly, like rotting flowers, mixed with something sour. It made my stomach turn. I walked by his house a few times after that. The door still swung open. No one ever went in or out. The curtains stayed pulled tight. The plants on his porch started to die. They turned brown and brittle, like they were just giving up. No one watered them. No one cared. Just like no one cared about Mr. Carson. Then it was the kid with the bike. I saw him almost every afternoon, pedaling past my window, baseball cap on backwards, that same old basketball jersey, even when it got cold. He always whistled a happy tune. He was maybe 10 or 11, always grinning, always full of energy. He'd zoom by, making that little whistle sound. A bright spot in a dim street. Then, nothing. His bike was just left leaning against a chain-link fence. It started to rust. The tire was half flat, and the spokes were bent, like broken fingers, just sticking out. His basketball was still in the yard, next to the hoop, flat and dirty. Nobody came to get it. The whistle he used to make was just gone from the street. The kid's house looked closed up, too. The blinds were down, no lights at night, just dark windows staring out. Another empty space. Nobody seemed to notice, or nobody said anything. I started to feel a real chill then, like something was happening that nobody wanted to talk about, like it was normal. I tried to bring it up to my other neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She lived right next door, a sweet old lady with bright red hair. I even tried to ask Mrs. Henderson next door about Mr. Carson once. She just blinked at me, like I'd said something strange. Then she changed the subject fast. "Oh, that old thing," she said, waving her hand. "He probably just went south for the winter." But it was summer. I didn't say anything. She just smiled a little too big, you know, like she was trying to hide something, or trying to convince herself of something. Her eyes looked a little scared. The house was hungry, I thought. That's what it felt like. A hungry kind of feeling hanging in the air, like it was waiting for its next meal. It wasn't just my house that felt like that. The whole street seemed to hold its breath, like all the other houses were just watching, waiting to see what would happen next. A quiet dread started to settle over me. It was like a cold hand squeezing my chest. I felt like I was living in a dream that was slowly turning into a nightmare. I started to sleep less and less. My eyes felt gritty all the time. Every little noise made me jump. I stopped listening to music or the radio. I just listened to the house. I tried to keep my mind busy. I worked on fixing up the place, painting walls, trying to mend the cracked plaster, but my thoughts always drifted back to the attic. The more I listened, the more the house seemed to talk back, not with words, but with its sounds, with its silences. It was telling me something. My head felt heavy, like it was full of cotton. Every day felt like a week. Every night felt like a month. I was tired, so tired, but sleep wouldn't come. One night, I tried to sleep downstairs. I curled up on the lumpy couch with the old television on low. It just hissed static, like a soft, tired scream. I thought being far from the attic would help. I wrapped myself in an old blanket. The room was dark, except for the flickering gray light of the TV. I tried to focus on the static, to make it a normal sound, but that only made things worse. It really did. Around 2:30, the static sound changed. It wasn't just white noise anymore. It was deeper, thicker. It sounded like voices trying to push through a thick wall of mud, straining, gurgling, like something trying to break free. It made my skin crawl. And underneath it, voices, my name, over and over, slow, drawn out. It sounded like they were calling me home, calling me back upstairs. It wasn't just one voice, it was many, all blending together, like a choir of shadows, calling me, inviting me. It wasn't a normal voice, it was like the whispers, but now they had shape, like they were trying to be real, like someone was trying very hard to speak. They were trying to pull me in, to pull me up, to pull me into whatever was up there. And a part of me, a tiny, terrified part, wanted to go. The static twisted into words, then faded back into hiss. Each time my name came through, it felt like a cold hand grabbing my heart. It made my whole body shake. My teeth started to chatter. I dug my nails into my palms. My breath was coming in short, quick gasps. I was scared out of my mind. The attic door creaked open again. Only this time, I heard something heavy moving around up there, like someone was dragging big furniture across the floor. But the sound echoed wrong. It was a deep, scraping sound, like heavy stone being dragged over rough ground, not like wood at all. And it seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. It was like something enormous was being moved, something that didn't belong, something that shouldn't be able to move in an attic. And it wasn't just above me. It wasn't like something was just upstairs. It felt like it was coming from far away, much further than the roof should have allowed, like it was coming from somewhere really, really distant. It sounded like it came from another world, another place. Like the house was just a thin skin over something vast and empty, and that something was moving, like the attic was bigger than the house, bigger than the city, bigger than the whole world, and whatever was in there was stretching, getting ready. I started to sweat, even though the room was cold. My hands felt clammy. Every hair on my body was standing on end. I wanted to run, but my feet felt stuck to the floor. I was frozen solid. My muscles wouldn't obey me. My eyes were glued to the ceiling, waiting for something to burst through, waiting for it to come down. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I was just so tired, or maybe I was going a little crazy, or maybe it was just curiosity, that bad kind of curiosity, the kind that pulls you closer to danger. It was a pull I couldn't fight, like a rope around my waist, dragging me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was too tight. It was like a magnet, pulling me up the stairs. My body moved before my mind could tell it no. A strange calm settled over me, a terrible kind of peace. My legs felt numb, but they kept moving, one foot after another, up the stairs, towards the sound, towards the door. It was like I was watching myself do it. I climbed the attic steps. They unfolded down before me. Thin pieces of wood, covered in dust, and something else darker. I could smell it now, that strong metallic smell of rot, underneath the sweet smell of old wood. The steps groaned under my weight. Each one felt like it might snap. The darkness above seemed to swallow the light from the landing. It felt like walking into a thick fog. The smell got stronger with every step. It was like iron and decay, mixed with something sweet and sickly. It clawed at the back of my throat. The darker substance on the steps looked almost like dried blood, but not quite. It was too black, too oily, and it smelled like something that had been dead for a very long time. It gleamed faintly in the dim light, like old tar. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to know what it was, but I knew. I just knew. As my head went past the opening, I thought I'd see low beams, maybe some insulation, our old trunks filled with clothes the moths had eaten, normal attic stuff. I expected cobwebs and dust bunnies, maybe some dusty furniture under white sheets. That's what attics are supposed to be like, not this. What I saw was sky, or something like sky. It went on forever, just black, so vast, like standing at the very edge of a cliff that had no bottom at all. There were no stars, no moon, just an endless black. It felt like looking into the true heart of night, a night that never ended. And it stretched out, bigger than anything I had ever seen. It was a void, a place of nothing, and everything. It swallowed the air, it swallowed the light, it swallowed every sound. And in that endless blackness, things moved. They moved slowly, so gracefully, like huge bodies floating under still water. I couldn't really make out their shapes, just the way they moved. They were massive, unfathomably huge, like clouds, but darker, and they drifted, not swimming. Each movement was slow, deliberate, like they knew all the time in the world was theirs. They were like living shadows, huge and silent. They cast no light, absorbed it all. They had no edges, just flowed into the blackness around them. The kind of movement that makes your knees feel weak, that makes your eyes burn because you know you're not supposed to see it. It felt wrong, deeply wrong, like looking at the forbidden. It was like seeing something that was never meant for human eyes, something that could break your mind just by being looked at. My head started to ache, right behind my eyes. My vision blurred. My stomach churned. I felt like I was going to throw up everything I'd ever eaten. It was too much. More than too much. The whispers were clearer up there, so much louder. But they didn't come from above me, no. They curled up from below, from somewhere really deep inside that huge, impossible place. They weren't whispers anymore. They were almost voices, a chorus of them. Old, ancient voices, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. But I knew what they meant. They were hungry, and they were waiting, and they were talking about me. Their sound filled my head, rattling my teeth. They were calling names, mine, and others. Names I had never heard before, spoken in urgent, hungry whispers, like they were waiting, like they were calling their own to them. The names felt like they were pulled from dusty records, from old graves, forgotten names. And they blended with my own, like I was one of them. They were calling to the dead, and to the soon-to-be dead, and I was on their list. My name was on their list. And closer, right at the edge of the opening, I saw them. Shadows. They looked like people, standing perfectly still just beyond where the attic opened. No faces, just dark shapes. They were tall and thin, like stretched-out figures. They didn't move at all, not even a flicker. Just stood there, waiting, like statues carved from the night itself. They were just vague outlines, blacker than the blackness, but they had a certain shape, the shape of a human. Only they weren't. But I knew. I just knew they had eyes. Even without seeing them, I felt their gaze, a cold, heavy stare that pushed down on me, like a ton of bricks. Their eyes were like holes in the darkness, sucking in all the light. They didn't blink. They just watched me, silent and still, waiting for me to do something. They were empty sockets, but I could feel the weight of their gaze. It was a terrible, consuming stare, like they were looking right through me, to whatever was inside. One of them took a step forward. It was slow, barely a movement, but it felt like the whole world tilted, like it was stepping out of that blackness and into my house. It was like watching a nightmare come to life, slowly, deliberately, moving towards me. I could feel the cold radiating from it. The ground seemed to shudder under my feet. My breath hitched in my throat. Every single nerve in my body screamed to run, to get away. It was too close. My legs felt like lead. My heart was going to explode. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Just watch this thing come closer. I fell backward down the steps. I landed really hard. All the air left my lungs. My head hit the wooden railing as I tumbled to the floor. The world spun. Pain exploded in my head, and darkness flickered at the edges of my vision. I lay there, gasping for air, tasting dust and blood in my mouth. My body felt broken. My vision was swimming. Spots danced in front of my eyes. The attic opening was a black hole above me, spinning. My head throbbed with a dull, sickening ache. For a while, I didn't move, staring up at that black square in the ceiling, waiting for something to reach down and grab me. My mind was numb. I could feel the splinters from the railing in my scalp. My back felt twisted, but I couldn't feel anything but the sheer terror, the pure, frozen fear. I heard the whispers then, loud in my ears, as if they were right beside me. They were laughing, a dry, rustling laugh that chilled me to the bone. They knew I was scared. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was a hungry laugh, a cruel laugh, like they had won, like they knew I was theirs. It never did, but the door stayed open after that, always. The string never moved again. It just hung there, limp, dead, like it had been used so many times it forgot what it was for. It was like a permanent hole in my house, a direct line to that terrible void, a gaping maw always hungry, always waiting, and the string was just its withered tongue. It was a constant reminder, a black eye staring down at me, day and night. It felt like the house had changed into something else, something alive. And the whispers, God help me, they followed me downstairs. They'd murmur behind the kitchen cupboards, sigh under the floorboards, curl up right under my pillow at night. They were everywhere now, in the walls, under the rug, in the air I breathed. They were part of the house, and the house was part of me now. I couldn't escape them. They were like a constant static in my brain, never loud enough to be words, but always there, like a buzzing fly you can't swat away, like distant radio static, tuned to a channel only the dead could hear. Sometimes they almost sounded like music, a strange, off-key tune that had no end. It was a lullaby for the insane, a song that slowly chipped away at my mind, making everything feel fuzzy and unreal, making me doubt myself. My sleep got worse. I'd wake up suddenly, heart hammering, just from the sheer quiet, waiting for the whisper to start. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every creak in the house sounded like it was getting closer. I'd jump out of bed, soaked in cold sweat, my mind racing, my eyes scanning the dark room, convinced something was there, right beside me. I started to have nightmares that weren't nightmares. I'd dream of that black void, the massive shapes moving inside it, and I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body ached. The dreams were so real. I could feel the cold of the void, the vastness of it. I could hear the whispers inside my head. It was like I was still there. I started leaving lights on all the time, but even with all the lights, the whispers felt like cold air wrapping around me. They made my skin prickle. They felt like tiny spiders crawling. The electric bill got huge, but I didn't care. The light didn't make them go away, but it made me feel a tiny bit safer, a tiny bit less alone. I tried to stay in the brightest rooms, but even there, the cold spots would find me. They'd settle on my skin, a constant chill, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Sometimes, I'd hear something else, a faint dragging sound, like something heavy was being pulled across wood, but not just upstairs. It sounded like it was inside the walls, a slow, scraping sound, like rough fabric on stone or bone. It moved from room to room, always just out of sight, always just out of reach. It was like something was crawling inside the very structure of the house, moving through the space between the walls, always heading towards me, always closer. I would press my ear to the wall, trying to hear it better, but it would always stop when I got too close, like it knew I was listening, like it was playing a game. It was teasing me, taunting me, making me paranoid, making me think I was going crazy. But I knew it was real. I knew. I tried to act normal, to go to work, to buy groceries, but my mind was always on that house, on that open door. It felt like a trap, no, an invitation, a waiting mouth. My boss started looking at me funny. My eyes were always red, and I jumped at loud noises. I could feel people staring at me, whispering, just like the house. I'd forget things at work. I'd snap at people for no reason. My hands would shake when I tried to do simple tasks. I was falling apart. I fell backward down the steps. I landed really hard. All the air left my lungs. My head hit the wooden railing as I tumbled to the floor. The world spun. Pain exploded in my head, and darkness flickered at the edges of my vision. I lay there, gasping for air, tasting dust and blood in my mouth. My body felt broken. My vision was swimming. Spots danced in front of my eyes. The attic opening was a black hole above me, spinning. My head throbbed with a dull, sickening ache. For a while, I didn't move, staring up at that black square in the ceiling, waiting for something to reach down and grab me. My mind was numb. I could feel the splinters from the railing in my scalp. My back felt twisted, but I couldn't feel anything but the sheer terror, the pure, frozen fear. I heard the whispers then, loud in my ears, as if they were right beside me. They were laughing, a dry, rustling laugh that chilled me to the bone. They knew I was scared. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was a hungry laugh, a cruel laugh, like they had won, like they knew I was theirs. It never did, but the door stayed open after that, always. The string never moved again. It just hung there, limp, dead, like it had been used so many times it forgot what it was for. It was like a permanent hole in my house, a direct line to that terrible void, a gaping maw always hungry, always waiting, and the string was just its withered tongue. It was a constant reminder, a black eye staring down at me, day and night. It felt like the house had changed into something else, something alive. And the whispers, God help me, they followed me downstairs. They'd murmur behind the kitchen cupboards, sigh under the floorboards, curl up right under my pillow at night. They were everywhere now, in the walls, under the rug, in the air I breathed. They were part of the house, and the house was part of me now. I couldn't escape them. They were like a constant static in my brain, never loud enough to be words, but always there, like a buzzing fly you can't swat away, like distant radio static, tuned to a channel only the dead could hear. Sometimes they almost sounded like music, a strange, off-key tune that had no end. It was a lullaby for the insane, a song that slowly chipped away at my mind, making everything feel fuzzy and unreal, making me doubt myself. My sleep got worse. I'd wake up suddenly, heart hammering, just from the sheer quiet, waiting for the whisper to start. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every creak in the house sounded like it was getting closer. I'd jump out of bed, soaked in cold sweat, my mind racing, my eyes scanning the dark room, convinced something was there, right beside me. I started to have nightmares that weren't nightmares. I'd dream of that black void, the massive shapes moving inside it, and I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body ached. The dreams were so real. I could feel the cold of the void, the vastness of it. I could hear the whispers inside my head. It was like I was still there. I started leaving lights on all the time, but even with all the lights, the whispers felt like cold air wrapping around me. They made my skin prickle. They felt like tiny spiders crawling. The electric bill got huge, but I didn't care. The light didn't make them go away, but it made me feel a tiny bit safer, a tiny bit less alone. I tried to stay in the brightest rooms, but even there, the cold spots would find me. They'd settle on my skin, a constant chill, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Sometimes, I'd hear something else, a faint dragging sound, like something heavy was being pulled across wood, but not just upstairs. It sounded like it was inside the walls, a slow, scraping sound, like rough fabric on stone or bone. It moved from room to room, always just out of sight, always just out of reach. It was like something was crawling inside the very structure of the house, moving through the space between the walls, always heading towards me, always closer. I would press my ear to the wall, trying to hear it better, but it would always stop when I got too close, like it knew I was listening, like it was playing a game. It was teasing me, taunting me, making me paranoid, making me think I was going crazy. But I knew it was real. I knew. I tried to act normal, to go to work, to buy groceries, but my mind was always on that house, on that open door. It felt like a trap, no, an invitation, a waiting mouth. My boss started looking at me funny. My eyes were always red, and I jumped at loud noises. I could feel people staring at me, whispering, just like the house. I'd forget things at work. I'd snap at people for no reason. My hands would shake when I tried to do simple tasks. I was falling apart. I stopped talking to people. My friends called, but I never answered. I felt like if I spoke, the whispers would get louder, like they were listening for me, like they wanted me to join them. It was like I was trapped in a glass box, watching the world go by. But the glass was fogging up, and soon I wouldn't be able to see anything at all. Just the house. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't escape it. It was like a spider's web. The more I struggled, the more tangled I became. The house felt bigger now, like it was stretching. The walls seemed to breathe in and out. The floorboards felt softer under my feet, like something was pushing up from below. The ceilings seemed higher. The rooms felt wider. It was like the house was expanding, making more room for something or things. I didn't want to think about it. It was twisting itself, warping, growing, and I was trapped inside its belly, waiting to be digested. It was a living, breathing thing. The air inside the house grew thick. It felt heavy, like breathing underwater, and that sweet, sickly smell became stronger. It was everywhere. It clung to my clothes. I started to see things in my peripheral vision, quick flashes, shapes moving in the corners of my eyes. When I turned, they were gone, just shadows. But I knew they weren't just shadows. They were getting bolder. They were testing me. They were getting ready to show themselves. And then came the night I saw the neighbor girl. It was the worst night of my life, the night everything broke. I was downstairs trying to read a book. I hadn't known her name. She lived 3 houses down, sometimes waved shyly when I brought groceries in. She had bright, laughing eyes, and her hair was always tied up in a messy bun, a little flicker of light in a dull street. She was just a kid, maybe 7 or 8, always skipped when she walked, always had a big, happy smile, a little bit of sunshine in all the gloom. I heard a soft shuffle on the stairs. I thought it was just the house again, but this time, it was different. It was too human. A slow, dragging step. It wasn't a creak. It was a distinct footfall, a soft, rhythmic sound, slowly coming down the steps, closer, closer. I froze. My book fell from my hands. I held my breath. My eyes were wide, staring at the bottom of the staircase, waiting. I saw her standing halfway up the attic stairs. She was wearing the same yellow dress I'd seen her in once last summer. Only now, it was torn, spattered with something dark. The yellow was dulled, almost brownish. The tears in the fabric looked like old wounds. And the dark spatters, they were thick, sticky-looking, like old, dried paint. It looked like dirt, but it was too dark, too shiny. It looked like something else, something I didn't want to name. But it was definitely blood. Her skin was pale, almost gray-blue, like old milk. And her eyes, they weren't right. They were too wide, too empty, too full of something else that wasn't her. Her pupils were huge, black holes that swallowed up the whites. No light at all in them, just pure, empty blackness, like the void in the attic. Her hair, once bouncy and bright, hung limp and matted. Her small hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She looked like a puppet. Her mouth opened, and what came out wasn't words. It was just the whispers, amplified now, the static sound warping into the shape of her throat. It was her voice, but not her. It was the house speaking through her. The sound was like 1,000 tiny needles scraping inside my head. It was her innocent voice, twisted and corrupted, repeating my name in a sound that was full of hunger. It was her voice, but deeper, colder, and full of something terrible, something ancient. It made every cell in my body scream. My blood turned to ice. I didn't think. I didn't grab anything. I just ran. My legs moved before my brain could tell them to. Just a raw, animal instinct. I didn't even scream. The sound was trapped in my throat. I just ran for my life, faster than I thought I ever could. I ran out of that house and into the streets, barefoot, my feet bleeding from where the splintered stairs had cut my soles. The pain didn't even register. Nothing mattered but getting away. The cold street asphalt bit into my skin. Tiny pebbles dug into my arches, but I felt nothing but a desperate need to put distance between me and that house. I didn't look back, not even once. I just ran and ran, until my lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. I ran until the houses became blurry shapes behind me, until the streetlights faded into distant blurs, until I was just a raw, panicked thing running into the darkness. The city around me was empty. Cars were just left in the middle of the road, abandoned. Streetlights flickered against nothing at all. It was like everyone had just vanished. Empty strollers lay on sidewalks. Doors of shops stood open, flapping in the breeze. No people anywhere, no sounds but the wind and the far-off sirens. The silence was deafening. It was heavier than any quiet I had ever known, a quiet that screamed of absence, of something terrible. A half-eaten hot dog lay on a vendor's cart. A newspaper fluttered uselessly in the wind. It was like time had just stopped, and everyone had just evaporated. It was like a dream, a terrible, silent dream. All the life drained away, and I knew, deep down, why. It wasn't an accident. It was the house. It wasn't a sickness. It wasn't a crime wave. It was the void. It was the whispers. It was that attic, and it had finally reached out. I didn't know how long I just wandered. Days, maybe weeks. Time lost all meaning. The sun rose and set, but it was always the same empty world. I ate out of trash cans. I drank from leaky fire hydrants. My clothes became rags. My hair was matted and dirty. I was just a creature of instinct. I walked until my feet were raw and bleeding. Blisters burst, and skin peeled off. Each step was agony, but the pain in my feet was nothing compared to the fear in my heart. Every muscle ached. My bones felt like they were scraping together, but I just kept moving, because stopping felt like dying, like giving up. I ate whatever I could find. Old food in abandoned stores, stale bread, water from broken pipes. I was always hungry, always thirsty, always looking over my shoulder. I saw other empty streets, other abandoned cars, other houses standing silent and dark. It wasn't just my block. It was everywhere. Or at least, every place I went. I slept in parks, hiding from the sky, under bushes, behind benches, trying to be invisible, because I knew it was still looking for me. The house. I'd wake up from the smallest sound, a rustling leaf, a distant siren. My heart would pound like a drum. I was constantly on edge. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black void, those shapes, those eyes that weren't there, and I heard my name, whispered, curling around me like a cold hand. Even in my sleep, it haunted me. The whispers became screams. The shapes became hungry mouths. I'd wake up gasping, covered in cold sweat. The nightmares were always the same, being pulled into the darkness, surrounded by those silent, watching figures, hearing my name called from the deep. I saw the neighbor girl in my dreams, too. Her empty eyes, her twisted smile, her voice, not hers. It was a torture I couldn't escape. When the reporters finally came weeks later, the story was always the same. A whole row of houses, empty. Everyone gone. They said it was evidence of break-ins, kidnappings, maybe some kind of big attack. They called it a mystery. They shook their heads and talked about clues. They interviewed the few people who still lived a few streets over. But they didn't know anything. They talked about gas leaks or a sudden plague. Anything but the truth. Anything but what I knew. They couldn't face it. I saw their faces on the TV screens in a shop window, their worried frowns, their hopeful guesses. They wanted to make sense of something that had no sense. But I knew better. I knew what took them. It wasn't robbers. It wasn't bad people. It was something far worse, something that lived in the dark. It was the house with the gaping attic, the house that breathed, the house that hummed, the house that collected souls. The attic took them. Whatever was in that endless space, whatever lived behind that black door, folded between the bones of the house, it wanted them. It wants everyone. It was a trap, a patient hunter, and the house was just its mouth, its way of getting to us, of pulling us in, one by one. It took the strong ones. It took the weak ones. It took the old ones. It took the kids. It didn't care. It just took. It's still out there, waiting, and I know it's looking for me. I can feel its eyes on me, even now, thousands of miles away. It never stops. I feel it every second of every day, a cold awareness at the back of my neck, like a shadow always just behind me, always there. I don't stay anywhere for too long now. I just can't. Every attic door I see looks like a mouth waiting to open wide. Every creak in the ceiling above me sounds like a breath held too long, waiting to be let out. I move from town to town, never settling, always on the run, always looking for a place to hide. But there's no real hiding from it. I sleep with one eye open. I avoid old houses. I avoid quiet streets. I avoid anything that reminds me of that place. But it's inside my head now. I sometimes sleep in my car, if I can find one that still runs, or in abandoned gas stations, anywhere I can feel like I'm moving, like I'm not stuck. My mind is always racing, trying to find the next place, the next hideout, the next escape, but I know it's a losing battle. And at night, when the world finally gets quiet, so quiet you can hear your own thoughts, I can still hear that whisper. It curls up behind me. It's faint sometimes, like a distant memory, but then it gets stronger, clearer, right there beside my ear. It fills my head. It's like a constant itch I can't scratch, a cold dread that never leaves, a little bit of the void living inside me, calling my name. It always does, soft and hungry, a promise, a threat. It's patient. It knows I'm tired. It knows I'm getting weaker. It knows I can't run forever. And I know, no matter how far I run, it will never stop. It's part of me now. It's listening, waiting for me to come home. And one day, I know it will find me. It always does. One day, my legs will give out. One day, I'll stop running. One day, I'll be too tired to fight. And then it will take me. It will pull me back to that house, to that attic, to that void, to be one of the silent shadows, to join the chorus of whispers. And then, maybe, I'll be the one calling out to someone else. A new voice in the old chorus. Forever. My name is Jonathan Hurst. I used to be a doctor, a man who fixed bones and stopped bleeding for our soldiers. It was a long time ago, a different life, really. Back then, the world was a place of loud noises and quick decisions. I saw things that no man should ever see. I held hands that were too cold. I stitched up wounds that never truly healed, not even after the bandages came off. The war changed me. It changed everyone who touched it. When I came home, the quiet was strange. The peace felt wrong, like a tune played out of key. I couldn't go back to fixing everyday aches and pains. My hands, they remembered too much. My eyes, they had seen too much. So, my work is different now. I mostly write things down. I write about a man whose name, maybe, should live on forever. But not for good reasons, not the kind you put on a shining monument. That truth, it's a hard thing to swallow sometimes. It sits heavy in my stomach, like a stone. It makes my sleep restless. He called himself Alaric Vane. Important people knew him. People with fancy titles and big houses. He was a private detective, the kind who worked in shadows. He worked for the police when they were truly stuck. He also helped the very rich, the ones who needed their dirty secrets kept quiet, locked away. But to me, he was something darker. He was a shadow that moved when no one was watching, a whisper you heard even in an empty room. He was a chill in the air, even on a warm summer day, a feeling that something was always lurking just out of sight. We first met in the spring. The year was 1912. London was covered in its usual gray fog, thick and damp. It clung to everything, like a heavy blanket. The air felt thick with coal smoke, clinging to your throat. There was a quiet worry hanging everywhere, a buzzing feeling you couldn't quite name. I had just gotten back from Edinburgh. My mother had been sick up there, her breath shallow and weak. I stayed by her side for a while, holding her hand. Coming back to London felt strange, like putting on a coat that didn't quite fit anymore. The city felt too loud, too busy after the quiet of her room. When I walked into my small flat, the phone rang, startling me. My old boss called me. It was Chief Inspector Collins, my old friend. Collins was a good man, steady and true, like a solid oak tree. He had a kind smile and a laugh that made you feel safe. He told me he needed my help. "It's a job for a special kind of eye, Jonathan," he said, his voice lower than usual. "The yard is tied in knots." I knew then it was something bad. A rich banker was dead, found slumped over his big oak desk. His name was Mr. Blackwood. They found him in his study, sitting stiff in his big chair. The room was neat, too neat. The doors were locked tight from the inside. The windows, too, were sealed shut. There was no way anyone got in or out. Not a chance. It was a mystery wrapped in a riddle, the kind that made your head ache. Only a red chestnut sat on his chest. It looked like a drop of dried blood. It was stark against his white shirt, a terrible splash of color. Scotland Yard, that's where the police worked. They were completely stuck. Their best men had no ideas left. So the Crown, the government itself, had called in Alaric Vane. Everyone was stumped, truly stumped. They needed someone who saw things differently. Someone who could see what wasn't there, what was hidden in the air itself. My job was simple, or so I thought. I had to figure out when the banker had died. I was supposed to look at the body, study it closely, and tell them the exact time of death. That's what doctors do. We read the silent language of the body. But what really grabbed my attention, what made my breath catch in my throat, was the man already in the room. He wasn't looking at us, or the dead banker. He stood by the warm fireplace, his back to us, gazing into the dancing flames. He was like a statue, carved out of shadows and silence. His eyes were fixed on the fire, but they weren't seeing it. They looked like two sharp knives, always cutting, always searching. He was thin, almost too thin, like a shadow stretched out too far. He had a strong nose that curved down a bit, a sharp point on his face, and his black hair was messy. It looked like he had just rolled out of bed, but it was on purpose, like a wild, untamed thing that refused to be neat. He didn't wear a hat or gloves. Most folks wore them in London's cold, even indoors, even by a fire. It was like the chill was too scared to touch him, afraid of what it might find. He slowly turned his head, like a cat watching a mouse, every movement soft and sure. He looked right at me, his eyes digging deep into mine. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, like he was just reading from a list of things to buy at the market. "Dr. Hurst, I guess that's you." He paused, a tiny beat of silence, a breath held. Then he added, "What a plain name for someone who's about to see something very strange." That was how it all started, that first strange meeting. I didn't know then how much my life would change, how much the world would twist for me. It all began with that one weird sentence, those sharp, knowing eyes, and the dead banker in the locked room. A new kind of fog rolled into my life. The cases started coming, one after another, like dominoes falling in a dark line. They came like clockwork, just like he said they would. Each one was a puzzle, twisted and dark, leaving a cold feeling in your gut. Each one was a horror, the kind that whispered in your nightmares, and each one tied us closer, like invisible threads winding around us. It felt like we were being pulled into a spider's web, bit by bit. First, there was a judge, Judge Abernathy, a man known for his harsh sentences, for always siding with the rich and powerful. They found him dead at his summer house. It was far from the city noise, a quiet place where the birds sang. But his death was anything but peaceful. His veins were full of a poison, a strange, rare kind, its name hard to say. It came from a far-off land, a place I had only read about in dusty old books. It made no sense to the police. They looked at it, confused, their faces drawn. No sense at all. They scratched their heads and mumbled about evil magic. Then there was a professor, Professor Armitage. He taught smart things at Cambridge, complex numbers and ancient histories, a man of quiet thought. They found him hanging upside down in his lab, his white hair trailing on the floor. His eyes were burned out, black hollows. It was a sight that still burns in my own mind, a picture I still see when I close my eyes tight at night. It haunts me, even now, years later. Each person who died had one awful thing in common. They had gotten away with bad things. They had somehow dodged being punished for their cruel acts. The judge had sent innocent men to prison, taking money on the side. The professor had stolen ideas, ruined careers, and even taken lives with his crooked experiments. Every single case they touched left behind crying and sadness, a trail of broken lives. Their actions caused hidden problems, like a poison spreading slowly through a town. They covered up awful things, thinking no one would ever know. And each time, Alaric Vane was brought in, like a shadow answering a secret call. He would appear from nowhere, calm and quiet, as if he simply materialized from the London fog. He was the one they called when the normal rules didn't work, and each time, the real killer was never caught, not by the police at least. They would throw up their hands, baffled, defeated, not until Vane himself, with a strange look in his eye, announced the case was closed. It was always a strange ending, neat and tidy, too neat, but also deeply unsettling, like a secret kept hidden in plain sight. It felt like a loose knot, ready to unravel if you tugged too hard. I went with him on 7 cases in total. 7 times I watched him work, like a spider weaving a deadly web. I saw him take apart reasons why people did things. He was like pulling apart a broken clock, piece by careful piece. He was like a surgeon, so precise, so careful with his words. He found secrets that were buried for years, secrets that people thought would stay hidden forever, lost in the earth. He showed how people were fake, how they wore masks to hide their true selves. He did it with just a few words, calm and quiet, but sharp enough to cut. But something kept bothering me, a tiny thing that wouldn't let me rest. It was like a little bug, always gnawing at the back of my mind. There were always loose ends, parts that didn't quite fit together, no matter how hard I tried. There was always time that was missing, moments that didn't add up on the clock. And he always left strange things behind. A small chess pawn. In the judge's study, on a polished table, a blindfold, dark and crumpled, found near the professor's twisted body. A feather dipped in dark, dark ink, found by the desk of a corrupt politician, another Vane case. These things made me wonder. They kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. I tried to figure out what they meant, what hidden message they held, what dark truth they whispered. But I couldn't. Not then, anyway. Not until a new case came along. A different kind of case. One that twisted my insides. It wasn't until the case of Cecilia Ward that I began to understand. That's when the blurry picture started to get clearer, slowly, piece by piece. It was like a curtain slowly pulling back on a hidden stage, showing something you weren't meant to see, a dark play. Cecilia was a governess. She was a young woman, kind and gentle, who took care of children for a living. She had a soft voice and a way with little ones, but she was accused of a terrible thing. They said she smothered the little boy she looked after, a sweet child named Thomas. It was a shock to everyone. A cruel whisper across London, ruining her good name. The family she worked for, the Ashworths, were very powerful. They had a lot of money and influence. They were known for getting what they wanted. The boy, Thomas, well, he was a handful. Everyone knew he was hard to control, a wild child with a temper. The lawyers for the state, they were hungry for a fast win. They wanted to quickly prove her guilty, close the case, and move on to the next one. They didn't care about the truth, only about wrapping things up quickly. But Alaric took up her side. He said he would help her, that he would fight for her truth. And he did, with a quiet fire in his eyes. He worked tirelessly, day and night, barely sleeping, a man driven by some unseen force. He dug into the Ashworth family's past, turning over every stone. He found the father, Mr. Ashworth, was a cruel man, a bully who liked to hurt people in secret. He also found out the boy's older brother, a cold, mean teenager, was the one who did it. The brother was the true killer, angry and jealous. Cecilia walked out of court a free woman. It was a miracle, a true shock to everyone who watched. Her face was pale, but her eyes shone with new hope. I felt happy for her, a deep, quiet joy, like warm sunshine after a storm. But something about it felt off. It always did with Vane, always that slight edge, that feeling that a piece was missing, like a puzzle not quite finished. 2 nights later, the brother was found. He was hanging from the ceiling of his school dorm room, his feet dangling. There was no note near him, nothing to explain it, no goodbye, no fingerprints anywhere, just empty air where a killer should have been. Only a jester's mask was nailed to the wall beside him. It was a creepy, smiling mask, painted with a strange, wide grin. It made my blood run cold, a true chill that went right to my bones. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was Vane's work. It was his signature, clear as day, written in the air itself. My stomach clenched. I went to Alaric that very day. My feet felt heavy as I walked, like they were made of lead. I found him in his study. He was sitting there, calm as a lake on a windless day. A book was open in his lap, and he was sipping his tea, as if nothing had happened, as if the world wasn't spinning out of control because of his dark deeds. His eyes were calm, too calm, like dark polished stones. "Justice," he said, taking a slow sip of his tea, barely looking at me. He looked out the window, not at me, but at the gray London sky. Sometimes it has to bleed a little to be seen. Sometimes the bandages have to come off so the wound can be cleaned. His voice was low, like a secret shared only with the wind, a whisper. It was like he was talking to himself, not to me, the words meant for his own ears. He never said yes. He never said no. He never admitted to anything. He never denied anything either. He just looked at me with those sharp eyes. Then he simply invited me to watch. And I did. I watched. I kept going with him, like a moth drawn to a dangerous flame, a flame that promised light, but also terrible burns. I saw more of his dark work, the cruel punishments he handed out, and part of me hated it, truly hated the cold, hard logic of it, the terrible beauty. But another part, a secret part deep inside me, wanted to see what he would do next. It was a sickness, a fascination I couldn't shake. I walked with him into dark alleyways and hushed drawing rooms. Each case was like a puzzle made of human suffering and hidden sins. A crooked banker who starved his tenants. Vane found him with his mouth full of mud. A gossip columnist who ruined lives with lies. Found with her tongue cut out, a bird's feather left nearby. Each death a twisted mirror of their crime. My nightmares grew sharper. I would wake up in a cold sweat, seeing the faces of Vane's victims, those who escaped the law, but not his balance. But the worst was still to come. The final case was very different. It wasn't just a puzzle to solve from the outside. It was personal for me. It touched my own life, reached into my very heart. Inspector Collins, our friend, the one who called me for that first case, was in trouble. He was accused of something terrible. They said he took money, a lot of it. They said he was paid off to hide a terrible group, a truly evil one. A group of people selling other people, little children mostly. A human trafficking ring. It was a terrible crime, so evil it made my stomach turn. The thought of it made my blood run cold. The evidence against him was strong. Too strong. It seemed everywhere we looked there was proof. There were books showing money payments, ledgers full of numbers, neat and cold. People said they saw him, watched him take the money with their own eyes. It all looked bad, so very bad. The police, his own men, looked at him with doubt. But I knew Collins. He was a good man, steady and honest. Like the ground beneath your feet. He had saved my life once, during the war. It was in Belgium, a place of mud and screams and tearing metal, a place where death waited in every shadow. He pulled me out of the line of fire when a shell exploded too close. He carried me on his back, a true hero. He would never do something like this, not in a million years. He just couldn't. I truly believed that with all my heart, with every fiber of my being. Alaric took the case. He was quieter than I had ever seen him, almost like a ghost moving through his own house. He didn't sleep, not really. His eyes were always open, always seeing. He walked around his rooms all the time, a silent pacing that wore a path in the carpet. His hands twitched, little nervous jumps like restless birds. It was like he was in pain, a deep, silent ache that twisted his face. It was unlike him, this raw, open hurt. He seemed to carry the weight of the world and all its injustices on his thin shoulders. Then one morning, he looked at me. His eyes were heavy, like he hadn't slept in a week, sunk deep in their sockets. "This is the very last deduction, Jonathan," he said. His voice was tired, worn out, like an old blanket. "After this, everything will crash down, the world will shift." He didn't say what everything meant, but I felt a cold dread spread through me, like ice water in my veins. That night, Collins was found dead. It happened in his home, a quiet house in a quiet street. He was slumped over his desk, his head down, as if taking a nap. A small, shiny silver scale rested on his open hand. It looked like a tiny, perfect balance, gleaming under the soft lamplight, a symbol of judgment. The man who checked bodies, the coroner, said it was a heart attack. He said Collins's heart just stopped, quiet and sudden, like a clock winding down. But I knew better. My heart screamed that it was a lie. I knew what happened. I just knew, deep in my gut. It was Alaric. It had to be. No one else could leave such a mark. My legs carried me, almost on their own, out into the pouring rain to find him. I found Alaric soon after. He was on the roof of our old apartment building, standing right at the edge. The rain was coming down hard, cold and stinging. It hit his coat like little angry slaps, but he didn't even flinch. He stood there, still as a statue, facing the gray sky, accepting the storm. I walked closer, each step heavy. My heart was beating fast and hard, a drum in my chest, threatening to burst. I demanded answers from him. I wanted him to tell me the truth, to explain this horror, to give me some reason for the death of my friend. He slowly turned his face to me. It was wet with rain, or maybe tears, running down his pale cheeks. His eyes, they were like burning coals, alive, with a terrible fire. "He was guilty, Jonathan," Alaric said. His voice was hoarse, rough like sandpaper against stone. "Not of taking money? No, not that." His voice broke, a raw sound of pain. He paused, his eyes fixed on mine, holding me captive. But he knew. He knew about the children. He looked away. He turned his head. His voice dropped to a whisper, filled with a terrible sadness, a burden too heavy to carry. "Children suffered because he did nothing." "So you killed him?" I asked. My voice was low, barely a sound escaping my lips. I could barely breathe. The air felt so thick and heavy around us. The rain felt cold against my face, mingling with what might have been my own tears. I needed to hear him say it. I needed to hear him deny it, to tell me I was wrong. He turned to me fully then, his entire body facing mine. His face was a mix of anger and a deep, bottomless sadness. It was terrible to see. A mask of pain, a picture of pure agony. "No," he said, his voice a whisper against the drumming rain, barely audible over the storm. I balanced him. He held up his hand, and in it was another small silver scale, gleaming like a tiny moon. He looked at it, then back at me, and I saw something in his eyes. It was a terrible knowing, a burden he carried alone, a dark mission etched deep within him, a path he couldn't leave. He believed he was right. He truly, terribly believed it. The weight of his actions, his twisted justice, it was all there in his gaze, cold and unyielding. The next morning, Alaric Vane was gone. He had simply vanished, like smoke in the wind, leaving nothing but an empty space. There was no trace of him. Not a single clue, no footprint, no sign he had ever been there. No body was ever found. It was like he just melted into the London fog, becoming one with the whispers and shadows, gone forever. Only a small note was left. It was tucked into my medical bag. I found it later, deep inside, almost hidden, folded carefully. It was written in his neat, sharp handwriting, the letters like tiny blades. It said, "To deduct the final lie, one must first subtract the truth." Years have gone by since then. Many, many years have passed, blurring into each other like old photographs. I am an old man now. My hair is thin, almost gone, white like winter snow. My steps are slow and shaky, each one an effort. But I still hear things. News travels, even to old men sitting by the fire, nursing their tea. And some news always makes me think of Vane, like a shiver down my spine. It's a familiar chill, a cold reminder. I still hear about deaths that are never solved, cases that stump the police, leaving them scratching their heads, criminals who die in strange ways, always somehow fitting their crimes, like a tailor-made punishment. Their deaths are like bad poems, written in darkness. They are like awful stories come to life, twisted and grim, played out on the world stage. There was a mayor, a greedy man, who stole from the poor. He was corrupt. He took money from everyone, filling his pockets with stolen gold. They found him drowned in a grand fountain, the water red like blood. It was the very same fountain he had paid for with his stolen money, a monument to his lies, now his watery tomb. Then there was a man, a truly terrible man, who ran a cruel factory, making children work for pennies. He hurt women and crushed spirits. They found him dead, suffocated. He was choked by a pile of legal papers, a mountain of laws and contracts. The very same papers he used to get away with his crimes, to twist the truth and escape justice, now his undoing. People call these deaths justice from God. They say it's God's way of punishing bad people, a divine hand reaching down from the sky. They say it's fate, a righteous anger from above, a force no one can fight. But I know better. My old bones know. I know who left that mark. I know that unique way of doing things, the chilling signature that belongs to only one man. It's Alaric Vane. He lives. He is out there, still working his dark justice, a silent, unseen force. Somewhere in the never-ending fog of this old world, a shadow moving in the corners, watching, waiting. And maybe he always will be. Maybe he can never truly leave this twisted path he chose, this lonely mission. The final deduction, the one I thought would end it all, was never truly final at all. It was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that continues to haunt the edges of our world, a quiet horror that never truly sleeps. My name is Thomas Rayner. I was just a systems analyst, you know? It was a dull job. My whole life really felt kind of dull. I woke up every day, I went to work, I came home. That was pretty much it. I didn't travel much. And when I did, it was never, ever by train, not even once. I always liked planes, fast and noisy. Planes felt safe, high above everything. Trains always seemed too close to the ground somehow. But a couple of weeks ago, things changed. I had to go way out to the countryside. My mom, she had passed on, and I needed to wrap up all her stuff. It was a tough time. A really tough time. My chest felt tight all the time. She was all I had left. The house felt empty already, even before I got there. Just thinking about her made my eyes sting. She was a good mom, always. She lived in this really quiet town. It was called Charlton, and the weirdest thing was, the only way to get there was by this night train. A night train. I hated night travel. It always felt spooky, even on a regular bus. It was old-fashioned, people said, like something from a movie. I just wanted to get there and get it over with, to clean out her house, to feel that ache in my chest ease up just a little. They called it the Midland Express. Just the name felt heavy somehow, like a big sigh, like it was tired or sad. It didn't sound like a regular train name. The train was supposed to leave from platform 13B. Now, that platform, it just felt wrong, like it shouldn't even be there. It wasn't like the other platforms, the ones I saw on my way. It was tucked away, almost hidden. I had to walk a long way to find it, past dark corners, past other tracks that just ended in bushes. The lights were dim there, almost gone. It felt like walking into a forgotten place. There were no loud announcements, no crowds of people milling about. It was just quiet, too quiet. No chatter, no phones ringing, no excited kids running around, no cheerful goodbyes, no hurried footsteps. Just the distant city hum, and here, nothing. The air felt still and heavy, like a blanket of silence had fallen over everything. Only one station agent was there. He barely looked at me. His eyes just slid away when I tried to meet them. He was a thin man. His uniform looked too big for him. He moved slow, like he was tired, like he was walking in a dream, or had been awake for a very, very long time. His face was pale. His skin looked grayish. I wondered if he was sick. He stamped my ticket, and his voice was low, like a whisper. "Carriage 9, he mumbled. "Don't change seats." It was a strange thing to say, but I just figured he was tired. It was late, after all, or maybe just a bit grumpy. "Okay," I said, but he didn't even nod. He just looked past me. The train itself looked really old, not in a cool, vintage way, more like it was just forgotten, like it had been left out in the rain for years. Paint peeling, rust spots here and there. The metal groaned faintly as I got closer. It sounded like a tired old beast, like it hadn't been touched since the 1970s. Everything felt thick and heavy inside. A musty smell hung in the air. It smelled like dust, and damp wood, and something else I couldn't quite place. The air felt still and cold, like time had stopped in that place, like the air itself was old. The platform was getting colder too, a strange chill. There were these dark velvet curtains on the windows, and brass lamps, kind of dim, hanging above the seats. The brass was dull, not shiny at all, like it hadn't been polished in ages. The seats themselves were plush, but worn down. The fabric was faded. You could see the stuffing poking out in some places. They looked uncomfortable. I finally found carriage 9. It was right at the very end of the train. I pulled my bag inside. The handle of my suitcase scraped softly on the floor. It felt like a loud noise. The door made a soft, heavy thud when it closed behind me. It felt like it sealed me in, like a lock clicking shut. Not just a door closing. There were only 5 of us in that car, just 5 people. It was so empty, so few, for such a long journey. It felt wrong. The whole train seemed empty, actually. I hadn't seen anyone else on the platform, just me, and this small group, and the spooky agent. There was me, of course. Then an older woman, maybe close to 60. She sat up super straight. Her back was as straight as a board. She didn't lean against the seat. Her hair was pulled back tight in a bun. She wore a dark, plain dress. Her clothes looked old-fashioned, like from another time. She was clutching her purse tight, like it was a weapon. Her knuckles were white. Her fingers were wrapped around it. They looked so tense. Her gaze was fixed, straight ahead. She didn't blink much. She looked like she was waiting for something bad to happen. Any second now. A teenage boy was there too. He had earbuds in. His eyes looked empty, like no one was home. He wore a dark hoodie pulled up. His head was bowed slightly. He looked lost in his own world, or maybe just lost. And then, a young couple. They looked maybe in their mid-20s. They kept talking really soft to each other. Their voices were like faint whispers. I couldn't make out any words. They huddled together, but not in a warm, loving way. More like for protection. but they never smiled. Not once. Their faces were just blank. They didn't touch, didn't lean on each other. They just sat side by side, whispering. Their eyes were dull, like they were looking at nothing. Nobody in that car made eye contact. Not a single person looked at me or anyone else. It was like we were all alone, even though we were right there together. It was spooky. A weird, heavy quiet filled the air. It felt thick. The carriage was so quiet. It was too quiet. There was no rumble you expect from a train. No clack-clack of the wheels on the tracks. No squeak or groan of metal. No sound of air through vents. Nothing. No whistle blowing in the distance. Just this dull, low hum. I felt it deep in my bones. It was like the hum of an engine, but I couldn't hear an engine. It just was there. Like a steady pulse. Soft, but always present. It felt like it was inside my head. A deep thrumming, like a giant heart beating somewhere far away. Then the train started. There was no warning, no jolt, no loud puff of steam, no conductor yelling, "All aboard," no sudden lurch. It just smoothly began to glide, like a ghost. One moment, standing still, the next, moving. It felt unreal. I didn't even feel it move. 1 second we were still, the next, we were going. The lights of the platform slid away. Then, they were just gone. The window outside went from dark platform to total blackness. The station vanished. It just disappeared behind us. I looked out the window. The station was already gone. It had just vanished, like a picture being erased. So fast, so quiet. It was too fast. Too quiet. Like it was never there at all. Outside there was only blackness. Not the kind of blackness you see at night. Not the stars and moonlight kind. Not the deep country dark. This was different. It was a shifting liquid void, like thick dark ink swirling around. It was deep. No stars, no moon. Nothing. Just an endless moving black. It was alive, somehow. That black. It moved and swirled. There were no trees, no streetlights. Just nothing. That was the very first time I felt it. That something was terribly, terribly wrong. My stomach twisted into a cold knot. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a normal journey. The clock on the wall of the carriage showed 1:07 a.m. An hour had passed. An hour. It felt like only minutes. How could so much time have gone by so fast? I'd only just sat down. I hadn't even checked my phone. I tried to act normal. I wanted to talk to someone, anyone. My throat felt tight. My palms were sweating. My heart was starting to beat a little faster. So I leaned over to the old woman. My voice felt loud in the quiet car. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound friendly. "Do you know where we are?" She didn't even flinch. She just completely ignored me. Her eyes were stuck on the window glass. She didn't move a muscle, like she hadn't heard me at all. She was staring at her own reflection there, even though it was pitch black outside. There was nothing to see. Her face was blank, like everyone else's, but her gaze was so intense, like she was watching something important, something only she could see. I looked closer at the window, too. Something felt off about her reflection. It wasn't quite right, not exactly her. It was subtle, like a painting that was almost done, but had one wrong brushstroke. Her reflection in the glass was smiling. Wide. Really wide. Too wide. It was a toothy smile. Not a friendly smile. More like a hungry smile. Or a creepy mask. But her real face, her actual face, was totally blank. No expression at all. Just her eyes, flat and dull, staring at this monstrous reflection. It was like two different people. The one sitting there, and the one in the glass. I blinked hard. Just once. My heart gave a little jump. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second. And when I looked again, the smile was gone. Her reflection was as blank as her face. It had disappeared so quickly. Had I imagined it? I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just my eyes playing tricks. The dim lights. The long day. My mom. All that stress. My mind was playing games. I was just tired. That had to be it. I was tired, you know? Stressed from my mom passing. Not enough sleep. That had to be it. But a cold shiver ran down my back. It felt too real to be just a trick. It settled deep in my spine. And it stayed there. I turned away from her, trying to shake it off. Just breathe, Thomas, look away. Pretend it didn't happen. Just keep breathing. But then, I glanced at the teenage boy. He still had his earbuds in, just staring ahead. He hadn't moved a single inch since I boarded. Like a statue. He was so still. Too still. Like he was frozen in time. And that's when I saw it. His earbuds weren't plugged into anything. The wires were cut. They just dangled there, loose, from his hoodie. Like they were never meant to be used. Like someone had cut them on purpose. Or they had broken a long, long time ago. He couldn't be listening to music. So what was he doing? His head was still bowed, his eyes fixed on nothing. And he was doing something with his mouth. He was mouthing something. Over and over, no sound came out, but I could see his lips moving. Just that one word, repeated, again and again, like a broken record. His lips moved so fast. A constant, silent chant. My stomach felt cold, colder than before. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. This was crazy. This was absolutely, completely crazy. Another long time went by. I wasn't sure how long. The train kept going. The hum was still there, low and steady. It felt like it was humming through my bones. It felt like it was getting louder. Or maybe I was just paying more attention. It didn't feel like we were moving, but the void outside kept rushing past. It was a blur of dark, thick nothingness. A silent, speeding wall of black. It was like a river of darkness flowing by, endless and deep. I checked my watch. It was 2:43 a.m. I looked around the carriage. My heart was beating so fast. The young couple. They were gone. Just gone. Their seats were empty. As if they had never been there, like they just blinked out, no trace. I didn't see them leave. I didn't hear a door open or close, no footstep, no rustling, no sound at all. There had been no stops since we started, no announcements of any kind, not even a tiny bell or a voice over a speaker. Their seats were just empty, neatly arranged. It looked like no one had ever sat there, no rumpled blankets, no discarded snacks, just perfectly empty. The velvet was smooth, no indentations, no signs of life, like they were just waiting for someone. It was too perfect, too neat, like they were expecting new passengers, like they were ready for them. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was really happening. This wasn't stress. This wasn't sleepiness. This was real. "Hey," I called out to the boy. My voice cracked a little. "Where'd they go?" He didn't answer. Didn't even turn his head. He just stared straight ahead. His lips were still moving. Still saying it. The sound of his silent mumbling was louder in my head than any scream could have been. It echoed in my skull. A constant, terrible hum of its own. That's when I saw it. The carriage door. It was at the very far end of the car. It was a little bit open. Just a crack. A sliver of darkness. But now, a strange glow was seeping through the crack. It was warm. A copper color. It pulsed softly. Like a heart. Like something alive. It looked just like firelight. The kind you see from a big blaze. Flickering and alive. It wasn't a small flame. It was big. Bright. It called to me somehow. A warm spot in all the cold. A beacon. In the dark, lonely carriage. Maybe it was an escape. I stood up slowly. Every muscle in my body felt tight. I walked toward the door. My shoes made no sound on the floor. The carpet felt oddly soft, like walking on thick moss, or something alive and damp. The train still hummed deep inside, but now it seemed to vibrate more strongly. The floor beneath my feet trembled gently. As I got closer, the door creaked. It opened wider, all on its own. No hand touched it, no wind pushed it. It just swung open. A rush of warm, stale air hit my face. It smelled like dust and something metallic, like old blood or rust, a cloying, sickly, sweet smell. I peered past the opening. What I saw wasn't another train carriage. It was impossible. It was a hallway. A hallway full of doors. Not train doors. No, these were house doors. Each one was different. So many doors. More than could fit on any train. Some were big and heavy, dark wood. One looked old, like from a Victorian mansion, with ornate carvings, and a huge, rusty knocker. Another looked like a metal industrial door, like a factory, thick and scarred, with a small grated window. Some were painted bright colors, red, blue, green, all chipped and peeling, like a child's art project, but old and ruined. Others were rotting, pieces of wood falling off, like they had been abandoned. They looked weak, fragile, like they might collapse at any moment. There were dozens of them, going on forever. I couldn't see an end to the hallway. It just stretched into the darkness. A tiny bit of the copper light showed it never stopped. It twisted and turned, like a long, winding tunnel. The hallway itself seemed to breathe. The light flickered with it. I felt a pull toward that light, a strange, dark curiosity. I turned back around. A knot formed in my gut. My breathing got shallow. My stomach churned. This was too much. I wanted to ask someone what was happening. I needed help. My voice got stuck in my throat. I couldn't make a sound. But when I looked back, the teenager was gone. His seat was empty now, too. Just gone. No trace, no sign he was ever there. And the old woman. She was gone as well. Her purse wasn't even on her seat. Just two perfectly empty seats, and my own bag still sitting there. My bag. It was the only thing left. The only normal thing. I was completely alone. In carriage 9. The hum felt louder now. It filled the whole space. Panic hit me then. Hard. It was like a wave crashing over me. My breath hitched. My chest felt like it was closing in. I couldn't get enough air. My hands started to shake. My heart pounded against my ribs. So loud, I thought it might burst. The clock showed 3 a.m. I had to get out. I had to find someone. Anyone. A friendly face. A way out. I had to find the conductor. Or another passenger. Anyone. Someone who could tell me this was a dream. A bad, bad dream. I tried to go back the way I came, toward the front of the train, where the conductor should be. But the corridor that should have led there wasn't straight anymore. It curved sharply, it went left, then it twisted down, like I was walking into the belly of a spiral. The walls seemed to press in on me, the ceiling felt lower. The carriage was growing smaller, or I was growing bigger. The train groaned then. It was a deep, low sound, like something alive, like a giant animal, shifting its weight, something in pain, or something hungry. It sounded so real, like a giant beast breathing, right there, inside the train. I could feel it in the floor. A deep, heavy rumble. Carriage 9 didn't even look like a train carriage anymore. Not really. The velvet seats were now rough, scratchy. The dim brass lamps flickered more wildly. The light seemed to dance, casting strange, long shadows. The windows, they weren't windows to the black void anymore. Now they were mirrors. All of them. And my own reflection looked pale and scared. My eyes were wide. My hair was messy. I looked like a stranger staring back at me, a frightened, tired stranger. The seats, they were facing backward now, all of them, away from the way we were going, like the whole car had turned around, while I wasn't looking, as if we were traveling back in time, or to some place I couldn't imagine, to a place of dread, or something worse. The lights in the carriage flickered. They hummed with a strange noise, like a dying machine, or a buzzing insect. It almost sounded like whispers, like many voices, just out of reach. They were soft, like secrets, too many of them. Just below hearing, a jumble of sounds, too many words. I couldn't make them out. I started to run, I just ran. My feet pounded on the floor, but my shoes still made no sound. It was like running on air. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from the hum, away from the whispers, away from the fear that was growing inside me. So big. I pulled open a door, any door. I just needed to get out. My hands fumbled with the cold brass handle. It felt slippery, but every time I opened a door, I was back in carriage 9, the same car. But it was always a little bit different. A new twist, a new horror, each time. Sometimes the seats would be covered in thick layers of dust, like no one had been there in years. Everything seemed ancient, hidden under a gray blanket. The dust smelled like old, dead things, like forgotten time. Sometimes there would be dark, sticky stains on the seats, like dried blood. They were old stains, brown and crusty. I didn't want to touch them. The smell of rust was stronger then. It made my stomach clench. Once all the windows were bricked over. Just solid red bricks, no way to see out, no mirrors. Just a cold, hard wall. Trapped. It felt like the train was mocking me, trapping me deeper. Time itself started to melt. I couldn't tell how long I had been running. Minutes, hours, days. It all blurred into one long, terrifying moment. Each loop was the same, but worse. Each time. I remember staring at my watch. The second hand was twitching, moving slow. Then it started to tick backward, slowly, against the normal flow of time. It felt like a joke, a cruel trick. This couldn't be real. It was winding back the hours, back to when I first got on the train, and then it just stopped. Frozen. The hands didn't move anymore, like time itself had given up, or had left this place forever. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare, a loop I couldn't break, a prison that kept changing its walls, but never its name. Always Carriage 9. I was shouting now, or trying to. No sound came out. I don't know how long I was running, opening doors, finding myself back. My legs ached. My throat was raw from the dry air. I felt faint. My body was giving up. But my mind couldn't. It just kept going. I saw shadows moving in the corners of my eyes, flickering shapes. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, like they were trying to tell me something. They sounded like my name. Thomas. Thomas. Over and over. But then, at what my watch showed was 4:11 a.m., I saw him again. The teenager. He was standing in the aisle, motionless. His back was to me at first. I stopped breathing. He was just standing there, like he had been waiting for me. But his mouth, it was stitched shut, with thick black thread, like someone had sewn it tight, so he could never speak again. The stitches were messy, uneven, like a child's clumsy handiwork. And his hands, they were covered in soot, dark and grimy, like he had been digging or handling something burned. They were stained deep. The soot was thick. Behind him, walking hand in hand, were the young couple. They moved slowly, like they were floating, not walking. Their feet barely touched the floor. They seemed to glide. Their skin was ash white, like they had been burned or drained, like all the color had been sucked right out of them. They looked like pale ghosts, wrapped in a shroud of dust. Their eyes were hollow, empty, black holes, no light in them, just deep, dark pits. They seemed to stare into forever, like they had seen too much, or nothing at all. They didn't say anything. They just stared at me, all three of them. Their faces were blank, but their eyes held something. No anger, no sadness, just nothing. An awful nothingness, a chilling emptiness that reached out and touched me. Their empty eyes looked right through me. It felt cold, so cold. A cold that went right to my bones, deeper than any winter chill. It was the cold of death, or something worse than death. I backed away slowly. My heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through thick mud. I fumbled for the door handle behind me. My fingers felt numb. It was cold to the touch, freezing. I slammed the door shut, hard. The wood vibrated from the impact. It was a desperate, loud sound in the dead quiet of the train. A bang. A real sound. For the first time in a long time. I turned around, my back against the door, trying to catch my breath. I slid down to the floor. My knees felt weak. My eyes darted around the carriage, looking for somewhere to hide, somewhere safe, anywhere. And then I saw her, The old woman. She was seated right beside me. She hadn't been there a second ago. She was just there, like she had just appeared out of the air, like magic. Her eyes were fixed on me. Her head was tilted slightly, a slow, deliberate movement, like a curious bird. She looked at me, and she smiled. This time, both versions of her were smiling, her real face and her reflection in the mirror window. Both smiles were wide and unnatural. Too many teeth. Too much happiness for what was happening. It was a grin that stretched her face too far. It looked painful. The corners of her mouth pulled back, like a puppet. She leaned in close. Her voice was raspy, like dry leaves, like sandpaper rubbing together, a terrible sound, like old paper crumbling, a sound of age and decay, like a tomb or a forgotten attic. It was chilling. "The only way out," she whispered. Her breath smelled like dust and old things, and something else, something sweet and rotten, like old flowers, "is to bring someone in." The words hit me like a physical blow. They made sense. A terrible, horrible kind of sense. My mind raced, trying to fight it, trying to say no. It was a logic that twisted my mind. A dark, evil logic. A trade, a sacrifice, someone else for me. At 5 a.m., the realization crashed over me. I finally understood. This train wasn't just a vehicle. It wasn't taking me anywhere. It was a trap. A cruel, endless trap. It was a self-feeding maze. It ate souls. It consumed memories. It reshaped itself, over and over, to mirror the minds of its victims. My fears, my loneliness, my grief. It was all used against me. It was twisting everything I was, making me part of it. And Carriage 9. It wasn't just the last car. It was the threshold, the gate, the very edge of the world, the point of no return, the place where you step from one world to another, from living to something else. You board it, and you become part of it. You don't just ride it. Your soul becomes fuel. Your memories, the tracks. They had all done it. The old woman, the young couple, even the boy. They had all brought someone, an offering, a way out for themselves, a ticket for their freedom, at someone else's cost. They escaped. They found their way out. And me? I had come alone. Just me. No one else. No one to give. No one to sacrifice. No escape. Not for me. Not yet. But now the train wanted something. It wanted a price. It wanted something in exchange for letting me go, a soul for a soul. That was the deal. I didn't know how I knew this, but deep inside, I felt it to be true. It was a cold, hard truth that chilled me to my bones. It settled in my chest, a heavy, dark stone. The next thing I knew, it was 6:13 a.m. I woke up in a hospital bed. The room was bright, too bright. The sheets were white, too white, so clean, so normal. It felt wrong. The air smelled clean, disinfectant. Nothing like the train. No dust, no rust, no old, sweet rot. A nurse was talking to me. Her voice was kind but distant. She was asking questions. I could barely hear her. She smiled gently, asked me how I was feeling. She looked worried, but like I was just sick. Not insane. No one believed me. Not a single person. They just looked at me sadly, with pity in their eyes, like I was confused, like I had lost my mind. And they were sorry for me. They said I was found wandering near the Charlton station, just stumbling around, barefoot, clothes torn, covered in dirt, lost and mumbling. A mess. I was badly dehydrated, they said, and I was mumbling nonsense, wild stories, about a train that wasn't there, about people who disappeared. They gave me medicine to make me calm, to make me sleep. They told me there was no record of any train scheduled that night, no Midland Express, no Platform 13B, and Platform 13B, they said it didn't even exist, never had, just a storage area or an old, unused track, a place for old junk, not a place for a train. Of course I went back, as soon as I could. I had to see it for myself, to prove them wrong, to prove myself right, to make sense of what happened, or to finally lose my mind, to know if it was real, or if I was truly broken. There was no station there, just cracked, broken concrete, weeds growing through it, like an old ruin, forgotten by time and people. The air felt dead, the ground was cold, and a rusted sign, eaten away by moss and time. It didn't say anything I could read, just a blurred outline, a ghost of a name. But I know what I saw, I know what I felt, every terrible moment, the hum, the dark void, the faces, the whispers, the cold, the fear, the smell of dust and blood. And now I dream of doors, endless doors. They open to nothing, or to another carriage 9, always leading back, always pulling me in. I dream of dim brass lamps and mirror windows that show me only fear, my own face twisted and pale, forever scared. It stares back at me, with hollow eyes. I dream of that warm copper firelight. It beckons to me in the dark, a constant burning invitation to the hallway of doors and stitched mouths that can't scream, but still repeat the numbers, a silent warning, a constant reminder. And I know, I just know, I have to bring someone unsuspecting, just one person, someone who won't see it coming, just like me, to ride the Midland Express, to carriage 9, because the next time the train comes for me, it won't let me leave empty-handed. I can't be trapped again.